We are on. Welcome everyone. It is November 6th. I just saw a comedian on. Sorry, I'm digressing. It's been a long day. I just saw a comedian say, you know, now that we're in the month of November, you're going to hear everybody say, I can't believe it's November. What is happening? What's going on? It's November. How did that happen? Sorry. He said it better and he got laughs. Monday, November 6th, 2023. It is a little bit after 7 o'clock. We're in the municipal building in downtown Hanover, midtown Hanover, where we're going to do good work for the town and have fun at the same time. We have an agenda that has a lot on it. We are going to reorder it pretty significantly. First of all, I'm going to do agenda review first before the public hearing. And then we'll do public comment after the agenda review, and then we will, in recognition of, I think what most people in the audience are here for, we're going to pull out of the consent item, excuse me, the consent agenda, the recommendation to adopt Advisory Board of Assessors recommendations. So we'll talk about that somewhere around agenda item number 5, and there will be some other changes as we go along. As we move forward. So that was agenda review. We are going to skip the public hearing for the moment, unless there's a pressing audience request to talk about the town parking garage. I don't think there will be. And we'll move to public comment. And just to reiterate or remind everyone, our rules with respect to public comment are that these are limited to 5 minutes, and we ask that folks try and not talk about items that we already have on the agenda, just because we're going to be talking about them later, and address all questions to the chair, which at the moment is me. So, having said all that, is there anyone who wants to speak for public comment portion? Please, and if you could come up. Oh, we don't have our microphone. Nick?
I can talk really loud.
Thank you. It's for CATV.
No, that's our fault for not letting.
Just give us a couple of seconds. We didn't give you ample time to set up. Sorry, Nick.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's our fault. Right. Is it live?
Yeah.
Testing.
Good. If you could just kindly identify yourself.
Yes, I am Jane Masters. I live at Willow Spring Circle here in Hanover, and I'm speaking on behalf of the 28 households at Willow Spring Circle, requesting please build the sidewalk on Verona. I've been talking about it. I know I asked when I first moved here. It was promised in 2018. It's been delayed. I'm aware of the delays, but it is a street on which there are probably 100 households, and there's no sidewalk. There are children in strollers, there are bicycles, there are elderly people, there are people, Dartmouth professors walking to and fro, and half the year it's dark, and it's a curved street with a hill. The bike and walk bike committee has done a study on it years ago and said we need it, and we'd like to know when that's going to happen. I know federal funds have come in to tie into Girl Brook, but I've never seen the plans on actually where it would go. So once it is going to happen, where is it going to be? And we would like to ask it happen before somebody gets hurt.
Thank you very much. I don't have the answers for you at the moment, but those are great questions. I know we've been talking about it forever.
I can say one thing is I'm just trying to pull up some lists here, and it looks like Verona was supposed to have been done this summer and was scheduled for this summer, but was one of the projects that got moved to next year because we did not have the staffing at Public Works to do it this summer. So it was at the beginning of the summer, it was on the list.
Yes, I was asked if I had a commercial driver's license, so maybe I should be hired.
If you
by
do.
the town, but no, I do not.
Yes, well, we're willing to pay for them now, so if you want one, let us know.
Thank you very much for speaking. Yes, please.
I just would add like to.
I'm sorry, do you mind just identifying yourself?
Marcia Frederick, I
Yep.
also live at Willow
Yep.
Springs. I'd also like to point out that there is a daycare center on the
Yep.
corner of Park Street, of Wheelock and Verona. And we have a number of families and little children on tricycles that have to use the road in order to get back and forth to the nursery school. So it's and in the wintertime, when the snow has completely covered all of the grass on the side, you have to walk on the road.
We've, the issue Alex was speaking to is we've had trouble having enough staff in Public Works. And unfortunately, we had to not do several projects this year. Unfortunately, that got cut. Or
Moved to next one. Yeah.
Thank you, the
Yeah.
wrong word. But as long as I've been here, people have talked about Verona Avenue as needing a sidewalk. Please.
Okay, my name is Carlos. I'm also live in Willow Springs Circle.
Yep.
And I have a dog, and each day walking with the dog, it's really dangerous. So cars that come from the left up, and then you have a curve, and at night they can't see you,
No.
and it's really dangerous, especially in the winter. Then you have to be in the middle of the road. So I think that must be done.
Yep. Yeah, my wife and I lived in Willow Spring Circle in 1993, 94. We had a puppy, and I did many walks at night with him. And it's quite dark. Any other public comment? David. David, before you say anything, may I point out something?
Sure.
Did you see this?
Yes, I see that. It's good. It's a good start. Thank you.
It's not what we're talking about is we've changed the logo. The town logo we're seeking to revise. David has pointed out that Dartmouth removed the wind vane from Baker Library a couple of years ago when we were behind in that regard. David, I'm sorry I interrupted you. Please go.
You're welcome.
I come because I have a sworn duty as a retired veteran to defend the Constitution, and because I love Mink Brook and will continue to fight to preserve it. I am an American by birth, endowed by God with inalienable rights to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. These rights are enshrined in the state and federal Constitution. Hanover and Dartmouth have violated my family's constitutional rights by dumping asphalt waste and coal tar in water that we drank and performed our religious ceremonies in. Although I have been crying in the wilderness, my voice has been muted by Hanover. The First Amendment is supposed to protect our free speech. And in New Hampshire, there's a right to know law, RSA 91A. Town meetings and minutes are supposed to be available to the public. I found out last week from Kerry Osgood that at least 12 meetings where I spoke were hidden from the public on the town website. In addition, I found out that all minutes are unavailable to cell phone users on the town website. My questions have been unresponded to during the last over 6 years. So even if I do make it here, I'm silenced. I have been arrested for trying to speak as long as others were allowed to speak. Hanover Selectboard minutes are being censored and don't mention accusations against town officials for state and federal crimes I brought to light. I've been seeking a conversation with town manager Thorpe for almost 17 months. At the last meeting on October 16th, Astos said that Mr. Thorpe would be contacting me. He hasn't. And so my right to get on the agenda is delayed again. I wonder why is that Mr. Torpy hasn't contacted me?
I don't know the answer to that even.
Mr. Torpy has recorded over 30 podcasts. You know, he's sitting right there, you could ask him. Mr. Torpy has recorded over 30 podcasts of Hanover Happenings. Unlike the town website, his podcasts are available on smartphones. I don't believe these broadcasts have included any coverage of my repeated attendance at select board meetings to discuss the criminal polluting of town waters by Hanover and Dartmouth. Mr. Torpy has not discussed the facts surrounding town officials who operated an open-air concentration camp for 25.5 months. In the concentration camp at Shantytown, an asylum of strangers were restrained without electricity, water, food, firewood, or rental income. Those restrained were racial and religious minorities, disabled people, veterans, my wife, and our girls. I know what it is like to be silenced and held in violation of our human rights. I have tried to be patient for the 18 years it has taken to stop illegal polluting by Hanover and Dartmouth, and the 7 years to bring an investigation of the town's criminal acts, caging human beings in a dangerous living environment without emergency access. The statute of limitations for these crimes is running, and the delays that this board has taken, and Mr. Torpy is taking, make it perilously difficult to come to some resolution before it's necessary to file a federal lawsuit. Recent events in Israel make us extremely mindful that standing up to abuse is a duty we owe to our neighbors and family. Hanover and Dartmouth need to face their crimes and make amends. It begins with this board responding to my cries for justice by listening and answering questions the public has a right to know. So I'd like to know, as always, who authorized asphalt waste and coal tar to be dumped into the drinking water where my family lives and where we have our rental property?
I'm not going to address that now, David.
Sorry?
I'm not going to address that, David. Is there anyone else who would like to talk in public comment? Okay, so let me just get organized. If I don't check things off, I'm not organized. What we're going to do next is remove from the consent agenda item number 4, which, as I mentioned before, the recommendation to adopt the Advisory Board of Assessors recommendations. Now, Nancy, did you want to?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to excuse myself from the dais because I serve on the Board of Directors of the Friends of Hanover Group.
Thank you, Nancy. And with 3 people, we have a quorum. Our quorum is 3.
Yes.
It has been a long day. Just kind of pull out the Assessors Board of recommendations. Now, we have many of them in front of us, and excuse me while I find them, please. Here we go. I'm finally there.
It is page 70.
Yeah. Text. Can I borrow you?
Yep.
We have several dozen. So the role of the select board is we have as is listed in our packet, which I'm having trouble finding, but I can looking in front of me right now, is the role of the select board is to either accept, not accept, or suggest changes. There are 3 options: suggest changes to the Board of Assessors findings. We don't have a lot of leeway in this regard, and as is noted, what I'd like to do from a basically a logistic standpoint is, I think a lot of people in the audience are here with regard to the Friends of Hanover crew issue. There are several dozen other recommendations made by the Board of Assessors, and I know, Carrie, you were there at that meeting and might be able to fill us in if need be, which I would like to move that we accept and talk individually about the Friends of Hanover crew issue. Is that logistically reasonable? Carrie, Jenny?
So if we pull out the Friends of Hanover crew,
Yep.
we can separately approve all the others, and Nancy could then rejoin us. So maybe we have the discussion
Fine.
about,
Fine.
okay.
That's it. Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
It's much smarter than what I just decided. So let's discuss the Friends of Hanover crew issue. So as I just said, we have been advised by our by Norm, who is our professional in this regard, and we have received some quotes from him from Laura Spector Morgan, who is a town council in this regard, that really our position, as I just described, would be to accept, not accept, or discuss further the issues with regard to the charitable exemption for taxes. And what I propose that we do in this regard is, since this is an issue which has just arisen, and I am not myself an expert, I would like to seek more information from Laura Spector Morgan, who is our counsel, with regard to what it actually means to the Friends of Hanover crew to have an exemption placed, granted, or not granted. That's my position. Carrie, Jenny, other thoughts in this regard?
I looked into it, and I think that I think from looking at the cases that have come before the New Hampshire Supreme Court, I think that we would be remiss to not grant them the exception. The Supreme Court came up with like a 4-point litmus test in Elder Trust of Florida versus Epson, which is the institution or organization was established and is administered for a charitable purpose. And that's one. An obligation exists to perform the organization's stated purpose to the public rather than to simply the members of the organization. So that's to say that, you know, it's not formed to benefit just themselves, right? The land, in addition to being owned by the organization, is occupied by it and used directly for the stated charitable purposes, which it is. And then 4, any of the organization's income or profits are used for any purpose other than the purpose for which the organization was established. Under the 4th factor, the organization's officers or members may not derive any pecuniary profit or benefit. Mm-hmm. So those are the 4 litmus tests. There's a separate issue that Laura brings up regarding the common interests of its members rather than the interests of the general public. For this Elder Trust of Florida, it was found that even though only a subset of sick elders could benefit, that qualified because it was an indefinite group of people who could not always necessarily be the same people. A similar case came up with the summer camp, and the idea being the summer camp, because of the age of the kids, it was not like the same kids were going to always receive the benefit. I think with the crew team being public high school students and homeschool students, there's a similar type of benefit. And then the third is that even without that, there's this idea of indirect benefits that has also been upheld, where a New Hampshire town had artists in residence and very few artists in residence, and they were the only people who received a direct benefit, right? Who received housing and board. And the difference was it was ruled by the New Hampshire Supreme Court after being, the tax exempt status was taken away by a lower court, but the Supreme Court of New Hampshire ruled that because promoting the arts is a public good for that town, that transferred over than the general public. And I just, there are just so many
Got it.
benefits here.
Jenny,
Yeah.
my proposal is really to delay voting on this, to get more information from Laura with respect to her opinion. It troubles me to disagree with her without more information. Well,
Yeah.
please, carry.
First of all, and thank you all for coming out tonight, and apologies for having to come out tonight. I know this was an unexpected event. I mean, Julie was telling me that until you read the Valley News, you really weren't aware of this, and so I think there is a question of kind of notification, and so we should circle up and just make sure that that the communication lines are clear and that you're getting the mail that you're supposed to be getting, et cetera. So apologies for that miscommunication. Thank you for coming out tonight. I agree with Athos that we are not going to make a decision tonight, but rather bring to light some information, and I think I'd actually love to have some commentary. So almost invariably in these cases, it's the bylaws that do not give effect to the charitable nature of some of your activities, and if those bylaws can be changed to better reflect the activities that you may be doing that are not part of your bylaws, usually that's a checkbox for the attorney. So I feel as though that might be a path to a different fate for the Friends of Hanover crew, and I think all of us are super supportive of all that you do, and thank you, and sorry you're snared in this situation. But maybe to the extent you're willing to come forward and talk about, and Julie, you and I talked a little bit about this, some of the charitable things that you do, including the dock and the fundraising, et cetera. That would be helpful. Or Fred, I'm sorry, it doesn't have to be whoever you decide.
Fred
Yes.
help me out.
Okay.
He has notes, I don't have notes, but I don't think I
Okay.
need notes.
Okay.
So
Just tell us.
If you can just identify yourself.
I'm Julie Stevenson, a resident of Norwich, principal of Hanover High School, and you're?
I'm Fred Cressman, and I'm the president of the Friends of Hanover crew.
Welcome, both of you. Fred, did you have notes you wanted to speak of?
I had written some things down, yeah. So I'd like to explain some of what we do that I think makes the Friends of Hanover crew eligible for the property tax exemption. We're a 501c3 charitable organization that raises money from Hanover High School crew rowers, families, and friends to make it possible for Hanover High School to offer the sport of rowing to all of its students. We do not cut anybody from the team. So in that sense, whether they're homeschooled or at the school, everyone who wants to take advantage of the sport can come and join the team. And we also support the Norris Cotton Cancer Center through our Proudy team to the tune of $2.3 million since 2007, the second most of any organization helping the Proudy. This is part of our educational mission to teach the value of contributing to the greater community to the students of Hanover High School. We also paid for the dock at Wilson's Landing and donated it to the town for all to use. It costs us $3,100 a year to put it in and take it out, which saves the town this expense. We raised the money to buy the Brooks Boathouse property from Dartmouth, acquire the zoning and building permits, build the boathouse, and rehabilitate the barn, so Hanover High School students would continue to have a place to row when the college said it no longer wanted to share its dock with Hanover High School. We've donated over 20 rowing shells to Hanover High School, and you should note that 8s cost about $45,000 each. 20 sets of oars cost us now $3,900 to buy a new set. 10 motors and launches approximately $7,000 each, and 40 ergs, which now run approximately $1,000, rowing machines. We support the team's travel expenses to the tune of about $5,000 to $7,000 a year, and we match Hanover High School by providing 5 coaching stipends to ensure the safety and quality of instruction for all of the students on the team, which typically numbers 100 students. Without Friends of Hanover Crew, Hanover High School could not offer the physical and emotional development to all of its students that comes from being on the rowing team. Indeed, the students have recognized and embraced the value of being on the team by making the crew the largest and most popular team at Hanover High School. We believe we serve the town educationally through Hanover High School Crew and bringing the physical benefits of healthy exercise on the river to townspeople by providing the dock, and inspire community charity through our participation in the Proudy. We believe the town should continue to allow the Friends of Hanover Crew to be property tax exempt. It is also worth noting that any money we might have to pay in property tax would have to be raised from people who already pay Hanover property and Dresden school taxes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fred. So what I'm proposing is we not vote on this issue tonight, essentially tabling it, getting some feedback from town council with respect to, I'm confused on the issues as well, and as Carrie just said, how is this just a simple change in your bylaws to reflect that, or is this a more complex issue which I'm not aware of? Does that seem reasonable to you folks?
Yeah, my main concern is, I mean, this is the big concern, but also that when we decide to have this conversation, that someone lets us know.
Absolutely.
Because that's the piece,
Yep.
I'm just worried we're gonna miss the memo again, and
No.
I don't wanna do that, because we feel like we didn't do our job if there was a meeting we were supposed to be at explaining what we do.
Mm-hmm.
So,
In the meantime, we'll take a look at our bylaws.
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you very much for coming out. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Athos, do you want me to either see if Norm or Laura can join us?
I think if we had even both, can we get both of them?
It's possible, yeah.
Or maybe Norm?
Yeah,
I'd really like Laura here.
okay.
Is that what you said, Carrie?
We might not need Laura. I don't know, depending on what she says. But
Or, yeah.
I mean, what I can do is I'll check in with them, have a conversation, and follow up with you.
That'd be great.
And get one or both, or whoever's
Okay.
appropriate based on that feedback.
Okay. And I would imagine, and we have to take this up at a future meeting. We're obligated to do that. So we will make sure that the board of the Friends of Hanover Crew knows when that will happen.
but the next possibility would be November 27th. Right?
Yeah, I don't want to tie us down to a specific date because.
You're going to be missing two board members on the 27th.
Okay. Let's not tie us down to a specific date right now. Okay.
May I rejoin you, sir? Sir,
Nancy.
Adam?
So let's take up the remaining issues of the Board of Assessors meeting, which I think at this point we're back to 4 people. Phew. I think we can take a motion to act on this. Is there a motion? Really, all we're doing is accepting. Go ahead.
Yes. Hang on 1 second. Move to grant or deny exemptions as outlined in the Hanover Advisory Board of Assessors property exemption request hearing August 9th, 2023, with the exception of the Friends of Hanover Crew, which will be addressed at a later time.
That'll work.
So second? Oops, am I allowed to?
I think so. No, you can, because we're not, yeah, just stay there. Any further discussion? Jenny, anything?
No, I'm not.
All in favor? Aye.
I-
Opposed? Okay, so we have finished that.
Thank you.
And- Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julie.
Thanks.
All right. Just sizing up.
Do you want to go back to the
Yeah,
current rates and
let me
fee
just
schedule?
check that off. No, I think we can skip that. Let's just put that at the, towards the end
Yeah,
when it's just the
yeah.
survivors.
If it's a public hearing,
All right, fine. We're gonna open a public hearing. This is a public hearing. I'm opening a public hearing to correct the current rates and fees schedule. So are we missing an S here somewhere? I'm opening a public hearing to correct the current rates and fees schedule for the town parking garage short-term rates, 4th hour from $3 to $1. Public hearing is now open. You're absolutely right, Alex. I shouldn't put that off any further. This is, I'm looking at the rates here.
They don't seem to be this year's, so I don't think they're the right ones on that sheet.
I'm looking at what you're saying, Jenny.
The fourth, those
The fourth hour.
those add up because they're from previous years.
Okay.
Maybe Alex can just walk us through the issue.
Yeah, Alex, do you have this on the top of your head, or is this?
sure, Ellen?
I did.
Okay,
Ellen, I
okay,
didn't see you there.
Yeah.
I was looking for you, but you moved.
I'm here. I believe that Ellen Bullion, Director of Finance. I believe that in your packet, although the original email did have the full schedule, including the year that we need to correct, it was cut off in the packet.
Okay.
So the published rate for the 4th hour is $3 an hour. The cumulative through the 3rd hour is $5. So, and the cumulative through 4 hours is $6. So 5 plus 3 does not equal 6. And so we need to correct the 4th hour
Okay.
to $1.
All right. Is
I
there?
have a question.
Yeah.
In looking at these fees, it struck me that they were a bit higher than the on-street parking, and I was wondering why that was. Because I thought that we had said that we were trying to incentivize parking in the garage and not on-street.
So the parking in the garage through the 3rd hour, because on-street parking doesn't go through 4 hours, is actually pretty comparable. It can be off by 50 cents an hour, and it's not consistent. So through a half an hour is 75 cents on the street and $1 in the garage. 2 hours is $1.50 on the street and $2 in the garage. So it's, I think that for the 24-25 rates and fees schedule, that there should be an alignment of the fees and how we want to motivate our people coming into town to park. But I don't think that that is a topic, that we can solve tonight.
Yeah.
And we had talked about doing a larger, after the last talk about some of the parking things, that we would sort of let some things play out for the rest of the year, then next year try to do a larger reevaluation, hopefully without outside consultants if we can avoid it, but at least look at things a little bit more carefully. Because I think there's a lot of inconsistencies or things we might want to change.
Yeah. The last time we have you, Jenny, I'm not sure if you were around town when we did that, but we've had a couple of large reviews of our parking system. This was all pre-COVID. We're probably due for some sort of reevaluation. We are due for some sort of reevaluation in this post-COVID state. Any other questions, Jenny? And this is a public hearing. Is there any comment from the public with regard to this? Okay. Is there motion to correct the 4th hour rate to what it should be?
Want me to read something in the
Please.
minutes? I move that we correct the current rates and fees scheduled in the town parking garage, short-term rates, so the 4th hour move from $3 to $1 on Monday evenings.
No, sorry.
I think
The
that's-
on Monday evening is referring to tonight.
Tonight,
Yes.
to $3, period, full
Period.
stop.
Yes.
Yes.
Is there a second?
From $3 to $1.
Yes.
Yes, $1 full stop.
Yes, second.
Second. Great. We have a motion. We have a second. We've heard from public comment. Call for a vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? And let's close that public hearing. That public hearing is now closed. Okay. I'm gonna I'm gonna bump around a fair bit, Alex, from what we talked about. I think the next thing I'd like to just get done is the bridge bond loan documents, if that's reasonable to bring up now. I think it's pretty important to move that forward. What we're talking about is agreement with our bank, which happens to be Mascoma Bank, with respect to what's the word I'm looking for? Re-upping, redoing the bond loan that we had previously negotiated with them, and we are now moving it. I'm trying to find the percentage point. I know it's 3.4 something. This needs to be done by basically now, at no later than this meeting. So, and this will save the town a significant amount of money than if we have to renegotiate on the open market again. And so, I would like to move that we approve the amended bridge bond loan documents. I guess I can say as presented, although I'd like to be a little bit more specific than that. Ellen, do you have the numbers in front of you?
I do, Ellen Bullion. Again, back in 2021 at town meeting, the town was given authorization to raise and appropriate $950,000 for capital repair and renovation of bridges. That original loan was structured as a line of credit that expired on December 10th, 2022. At that time, roughly $320,000 worth of the funds had been drawn, and then that instrument lapsed. The town has spent the full $950,000, and so Mascoma has agreed to have a second draw and under this new loan document, and again that interest rate is at 3.49%.
Okay. And if we don't move on that now, then we lose that negotiating privilege, basically.
We do, and if we don't move ahead and execute the documents, if we had to renegotiate this today, and this was as of a couple weeks ago, the rate would be at 6.5%. It's a couple $100,000 on the $630,000 borrowing. I would like to note that I had a conversation with the Finance Committee a couple weeks ago. They asked some excellent questions, and I think it is important to note that there is a capital reserve fund bridge repair capital reserve fund of $195,000 today. That is not something that we can access today. It would have to be through town meeting. And so I did want to make sure that the select board did know that there is no prepayment penalty on these loans.
Okay, that's great.
I think it's important.
That is important. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ellen. Kari?
So Kari answers between Etna and Hanover Center. I'm speaking in part as Finance Committee Chair and as part as follow-up that we haven't discussed, but I would like to start by thanking Ellen for coming to our meeting and explaining some things to us, and also actually to Muskoma Bank, who I have to say has also been a great partner with our schools.
Yep.
And to the extent that any of our staff, when interacting with them, can share the appreciation of the community at large, I think that's a great idea. So just on the last note about that there is no prepayment penalty. So part of the thing with this now is that the first $320,000 is at a lower rate. This is at a higher rate, and I have to say, I think that Ellen told us what the cost of this switch is, as opposed to having it, the whole $950,000 at the lower rate. But the question is, if we did a prepayment, would we have to pay down the first part first, that is the lower interest rate, or could we pay down this higher rate? And I didn't know if there was an answer to that yet.
In reading the loan documents, the document that we'll sign today is a separate document, and the prepayment of the no prepayment penalty is within that document.
That is true, but sometimes the two documents end up getting read together. And part of the reason why I'm asking questions now, because in a way it's sort of moot. You know, you either need to go forward with the amended, or there's a worse option down the road. But because at our last town meeting, we approved $31 million of bonds, I think that it's important that we sort of get things down pat with this bond. And so that it's good to learn that we can do an amendment if that's needed, but how is it really considered? Is it really one, or is it two separate things? And I would still be interested in knowing how Ms. Stoma views that lack of a penalty payment. But moreover, in the documents here, it says that part of this is due to project timing. That we had the expiration. And I was just wondering and I asked this question a number of weeks ago, what was meant by that? Because if anything, our Department of Public Works was very much on top of this. I think completed the work faster than any of us, thought was going to be possible. I know that the contractor even worked over Labor Day weekend, to get the road back open as soon as possible and everything. So considering that the work for the 5 projects was done several months before the bond expired, and then it was well known that 5th project was originally budgeted for $74,000 and it came in over $200,000, that there was no way that it was going to fit into the original bond, and that we were going to need to use supplemental funds. So I'm just wondering, when it says that this happened due to project timing, what do we mean by that?
Ellen, did you want to address that, or I don't have an answer?
I'm happy to address it. I think that portion of the statement, and I think that we can agree that the major driver of this was staff transition, and the fact that no one was in the finance director job when this loan or this line of credit expired. No one was aware.
Yeah.
And so, but I think the comment on the timing is that The first draw did only address what had been completed at that time. So I believe that that's the statement on the impact of the timing, and that piece was drawn, and then really that draw happened, I believe, in June of 2022, and then the transition happened quite soon after that.
Yeah, it's just, I really felt that it shouldn't reflect at all on Department of Public Works, because I know, actually.
It doesn't sound like it is, though.
Yeah, but I wanted to make sure not. I guess the other thing then is that there was the transition, and, you know, difficulties are just endemic to times of transition. You know, we understand that. I guess part of what, again, looking forward, how we communicate on these things. The first hint that there was some lack of communication was back in January. You know, this showed up on your desks on, you know, October 9th. In those intervening months, there were options that have since closed. So if we could have started to discuss this sooner, perhaps we would have even, you know, a different outcome, because the amount of interest that we're all going to pay now on this new amended bond is higher than what it was before. And so I'm just not clear how the communication sort of halted, given that, you know, there was some hint that something was going on in January. It was known in April. In May, you were asked to approve, you know, a use of highway funds for the bridge, and then it, you know, and we, you know, had been asking questions and not really getting answers, and then, you know, it showed up in the packet in October, and by then all these other options were moved. So I'm just, I'm you know, I'm just wanting to make sure that we understand the importance of keeping everybody in the loop, and realizing that by not talking about things sooner, that opportunities close. And I don't know how or why that happened, given that we were asking questions.
Don't have any answers for you, Carrie.
Well, I think clearly we can do better. So we're fortunate in that Ellen was able to secure a rate, I think, back in April, and we're very fortunate to have a partner in Mascoma that's honoring that rate. So we count ourselves lucky.
Yes.
There's no question that administrative changes were at the root of this. There are processes being put in place right now, such as the capital improvement program, that will be looking much more closely at this. And I think that with that scrutiny and involvement, things like this are much less likely going forward.
Yes.
You know, it is unfortunate, but I think that processes and procedures are being put in place now, and this which happened, you know, before Ellen's watch. Ellen's now on board, which is great. So we have personnel and processes that are going to be looking at this.
Right.
And sure, and you know, this one hurts. We would love to have 2%, not 3.5%. But tonight we're trying to get 3.5%, not 6.5% or higher.
Yes.
So
Yes, I appreciate that, and that is actually part of what I was looking at. What do we have in place going forward? And again, it's with the idea that we have taken out, or we have authority to take out 31 million. You know, it's the stakes are definitely higher. I've been trying to follow the CIPC, and it hasn't been entirely clear what all their mandate entails, whether or not it would be to sort of oversee bonds as they move forward, or to vet them. So I'm saying no. So then the question is, where might, and I have to say it was suggested at one point they would. My question is, what are the processes then? And I don't know that we have the answer tonight, but it's saying, you know what, with 31 million, we really need to make sure that we have things down pat.
and I don't know who's shaking their head now.
I don't think bonds supervision is going to be part of the CFPC.
Oversee is not the right word.
Right.
But making recommendations to the select board with respect to financial and revenue related to capital projects is part of the mandate, but that's not the same as oversight.
Right.
So,
I mean, at one point I had asked the question, for example, I think it's wastewater has $1 million in undesignated fund balance that could offset some of the authority that was given. Should that $1 million be given? And I mean, this is kind of similar to this very small bond, when you have alternate funding sources. And at one point it was said, oh yeah, CIPC can address that. But I haven't really heard that as now being in their cat.
well, so part of the discussion of the CIPC was, and Pete brought this up, was do we really need to have a highway and a bridge? And there's the three possible, could we can possibly consolidate? So I think these sorts of things are being talked about. But oversight's probably not the right word, but.
Right, but again, I'm just, given the history of this one small bond, which is not, what anybody had hoped for, and even though it was unexpected things happen, right? Unexpected is expected. So what do we have, what belts, what suspenders do we have? When
So
we're
how do we know this will never happen again? That's what you're asking.
Yes.
I mean, we have a talented staff that is watching this. I mean, which there was a lapse in that, and we're moving forward. I mean, that is the system. We don't have an oversight. We don't have a checklist. We have Ellen doing a wonderful job, and that's the system. And Alex supervising.
Okay. I would encourage the select board then to also, take a good look that when you have the MS 434 in front of you and you see numbers on it changing, that you ask questions. I suggest that you keep an eye on your debt service payments in your budget, and because those are the reasons why questions were being asked, because it was, indication was there. And I think it could have had a different outcome. I agree with you entirely that we have a wonderful director of financial services, but again, unexpected things happen, and I just think with everything at stake, that we need to make sure that there's a backup system, that people are on their toes. Thank you.
Please. Thank you, Kari.
Thank you.
My name is Greg Snyder. I'm a member of the Hanover Town Finance Committee. I have a suggestion on how this subject may be improved upon. And that is, what we're talking about is, I think this is a fair statement, is that strengthening the town financial reporting and accounting systems is a work in progress. Progress is being made, very much so, with Ellen on board, and she has established a strong relationship with the Finance Committee for the town. However, if we look at the Selectboard Goals and Priorities document, one could not find within these priorities something that specifically relates to strengthening the financial and reporting and accounting systems. And I would say that it would be very helpful to have that actually in the document, because that would require us to have focused attention on this issue. We will not be able to solve this unless we have that sort of focused attention. And we can't just leave it to our good employee and staff for that to happen. I think it has to have full support from the select board, and that amendment to the document would be a helpful way to focus on.
Thank you very much for that articulate.
Thank you very much.
Yes, that's a wonderful comment and much appreciated. A little while ago, I did make a motion. It was never seconded.
I would like to second.
Okay.
To second your amendment to,
Is
your
there,
your motion to approve the amended bridge bond loan?
great. And there are, just before we vote on this, and is there further public comment? Alan, there are 4 documents here that I'm looking at, is that correct? Or are there several copies of them?
So there are 3 copies, I believe, of the amendment and 1 copy of the resolution of the
Okay.
governing board.
Okay,
And there are 4 items on the resolution of governing board that need to be voted.
okay. So we need 4 different votes, is that what you just said?
I believe that they can be all read in all one vote.
Okay.
On
So the motion on the table is to accept the documents, the amended bridge bond loan documents.
Correct. And to pass the resolution which authorizes that amendment, authorizes the execution of the amendment, so in that vote and that document, the resolution needs to be signed.
Okay, okay, thank you. So I think we're good. I'm going to call for a vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I wanted to just say one thing.
I'm sorry, Jenny, I didn't see, did you vote? I wasn't.
I didn't vote because I thought we'd have an opportunity to speak. I was waiting.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought I asked
No,
for
we had-
more discussion.
I
didn't mean to cut you off.
did ask the audience.
No, I asked the board too, but
Uh,
we may have to play the tape again. But anyway, Jenny, what issue?
Oh, just with the bridges, I
Yeah.
think it's incumbent upon the select board, because we are responsible for overseeing not just the finances,
Yep.
but the public spaces and our roads, that we make it clear, even though Muskoma has nothing to do with this, but we make it clear to our staff that they should be applying the Complete Streets policy
Mhm.
that the select board passed.
Mhm. Mhm.
With
Do you-
regard to bridges,
Jenny,
and it's really specific, that there should be space allowed for people to walk and bike. And New Hampshire has ideas for how to do this with very, very limited right of way, which is very much like the way we do it on Valley Road. And for a lot of the bridges that we've used this bond for, those ideas could have been applied. I just think it's important that we don't waste the money
Yeah.
doing an incomplete job when we could be doing a complete job. I just want to remind everyone that, like overseeing the finances, overseeing the public space and our roads is also our responsibility, and it's important that we take that seriously.
absolutely. Jenny, do you think that, in your opinion, do you think that Complete Streets, I don't want to use the word resolution, but sort of concept is embedded or in what we're doing or not embedded? I mean, is it something that we need constant reminder of, or is it something which is?
Yeah, I think we routinely update and resurface our roads without putting into bid the changes that need to be made, because there's often a small design piece that needs to happen. Some consideration, like when you're doing something differently than you're doing it as you are now, it takes that little extra bit of effort in planning. And if we skip that step, we just literally go down the same path that we did before.
Yeah.
When we know we should be taking the time to think a little differently.
Yeah.
So I would say no, not always, and
Yeah.
then sometimes.
Okay. Yeah, spending.
Is that
Yeah, no, that answers. I mean,
without getting into the weeds?
right. No, that's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have, Jenny, did you want to vote on this or not?
Sure, then yes, I want the best rate we can get,
Okay,
given the circumstances,
so that
with
was,
a no prepayment penalty. That's great.
here, I'm gonna,
So that's unanimous.
yes, it is unanimous. I'm gonna hand this to you folks to sign so that, well, actually, we need Ellen here for a lot more. So, I'm just looking at our agenda, and I know we have the finance committee here, and
ARPA.
yeah, I'm wondering, what time is it? Oh, I actually fixed the clock too, so it really is only 8 o'clock. Good, we're doing well with regard to time. Excuse me, everyone in the public, I apologize for me just reviewing. I don't want to miss anything. What does the select board think? Should we, I mean, the big things we need to talk about are the Selectboard Goal Setting Workshop document, ARPA, and tax rate guidance. The logic, I think in terms of priorities, having thought about this a little bit more, and this I may disagree with you a little bit, Carrie, with respect to maybe we should talk about the goals and then tax rate, and ARPA we might be able to push a little bit. Is that true, Alex? Can we push ARPA or no?
I mean,
well,
yeah, so, I mean, I think the most important thing for tonight is getting guidance that we can use to start the operating capital budget process. So the ARPA would be good to do tonight. You know, as we push out, we increase risk, but there's not a hard cutoff, you know, at midnight at December 31st.
Right.
But I think there's $1.2 million at stake.
Yep.
And in a prior conversation today, you said we better not miss tonight, or we are potentially risking $1.2 million. So
why don't we touch on the ARPA issues?
We should definitely go through them tonight.
Why don't we go through them tonight, and then maybe we can vote on.
I mean, maybe we'll all be on the same page, although probably not.
Fine. Nancy, you were?
No, I was just going to recommend that we do it 2-3-1.
2, 3, 1. I would suggest 2, 1, 3.
Okay. I don't think that the finance committee needs to carry on our goals, setting a workshop.
Well, they've already made some good suggestions with regard to them.
Greg did.
Yes. All right, let's start. What are we going to start with? Let's start with 2. Let's start with ARPA. Now we're going to find that page. I still haven't figured out if it's better to have these things in print or on my laptop. So that's in the.
And so, Athos, do you want me to give a little quick overview? I won't read the whole thing from the front page there, but you know, I mean, everybody on the board and probably everybody in the room at least is aware of some of the history here, that we have $1.2 million. And from the federal government that we got in 21 and 22. There had been some conversations in the past, but no commitments or kind of allocations made. We got guidance from the select board a couple months ago to go back to department heads and solicit some project ideas. I think the idea was try to have things that were really high community impact. You know, especially if there were one-time costs associated with projects that we maybe wanted to do for years but couldn't do because we didn't have the funds to get them started, that we could use this to jumpstart certain things like that. And so we did go back to departments, and we came up with the list attached. I will also say, maybe I'll start here, that we did allocate some of the money in last year's budget process, but I'll also say that the ARPA money is totally outside the municipal budget process. There's no town meeting review or approval. It's not synced to our fiscal year. We're just sort of matching it to the fiscal year conversations just to make it to try and simplify so we don't have another sort of timeline happening between the calendar year, tax year, and fiscal year. So there were a handful of projects that we did identify last year, and then I don't know if you want me to go through or start to go through the list of ones that we're talking about this year. And I know there are some comments and questions and
why don't we, when's our next meeting? It's the 27th, but we're down 2 select board members. Alex, could you just run down them really quick? Let's see where we sit. Let's just see where we go.
Are we able to comment?
Yeah.
As things go on?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, great.
Why don't we?
Go for it, man.
Why don't you let Alex just go through the whole list?
Yeah, maybe we'll run through the list once and then go back. Yeah, I like that. And I'll say too, I didn't mention just now, but the timing crunch that we're under is we have a legal obligation to commit these funds by the end of the calendar year of 2024, so next year. However, the guidance that we have gotten from the New Hampshire Municipal Association, that with such a contested election year next year, that money like this is very likely to get, or very possible to get clawed back by the federal government, that we probably have the largest pot of unallocated money in New Hampshire or broader, and so it's going to be right at the top of the list if federal lawmakers are looking to bring money back into the federal budget. And so when we say allocated, there are clauses involved. When we say allocated, it basically means, when we say the word committed, which is what we have to do with the ARPA funds, is that isn't agreeing to spend it, it's not a purchase order, but it's a contract for services. Those services could be for services or products later in the future, but it has to be more formal than just a purchase order. It has to be an actual agreement with the vendor. So the advice that we've got from NHMA is get this money out the door this calendar year as soon as possible, as much as possible, so that we minimize the risk of any of that money going back. So I'll run through the projects that we're proposing. This is $935,000 or about $935,000 worth of projects. I think that's actually a couple $1,000s off. And $265,000 was allocated last year out of the total of $1.2 million. So one project is road and sidewalk reconstruction for Main, Lebanon, and Allen Streets, and that's proposed at $600,000. Downtown placemaking, which is sort of hardscaping and different physical things in the downtown for events and for pedestrians and things like that, it's $30,000. Public Wi-Fi or internet in the downtown for $25,000. An additional set of funds for records digitization and online services, $40,000. Home internet grant funds, which I can talk more about, for $10,000. New air exchangers for the dispatch center at $30,000. A fit test mask machine for the fire department at $25,000. 2 projects for Howe at the Howe. One is up to $40,000, which is creating a second Zoom room, basically replicating the mayor room. And then the second project of $17,000, which is to replace all the furniture in the Murray room. And then the last project is new and upgraded portable radios for the police department, and that is at $100,000. So I think that comes out actually to a little less than $935,000, but just about that.
Alex, the biggest one in that, I had it right. Here we go. The $600,000. It sounds. Basically, this is doing work that we basically Main Street, Lebanon Street, Allen Street all need to be reworked over the future, and this is working on some basically place setting. We're starting the process as opposed to this is not going to cover the entire process, but it's going to do a lot of. I know we talked about the bottom line, but I think this will certainly do a lot of improvements with regard to that. There were some questions. I did receive some questions with regard to what $600,000 going to do. I think we can make a pretty good first step in that regard.
It certainly helps. You know, it's not a small amount of money, and at the end of the day, even if it's just a small percent of a project, it's still $600,000. You know, which is not a small amount. And yeah, I mean, this is, you know, all for improving the mobility and safety in the downtown. You know, we've talked a lot here. We've had a lot of issues, especially with the rise of bikes and e-scooters in the downtown, that really those types of devices cannot be on the sidewalk, because that's not safe for pedestrians, and we've had some accidents there and complaints from residents about that. But also our streets are not very safe for those sorts of devices or vehicles either, especially with the angled parking and the narrow lanes. We have a lot of issues around there. And so this project, which was talked about, I think over a 1 or 2 year period of time, maybe 3 years ago or 4 years ago, a consultant was hired. There were a whole bunch of different public meetings, and there were, I think, 3 or 4 options that were identified. The option that was kind of most popular, that is the one that we're sort of moving forward with conceptually, at least at this point, is something that would widen the sidewalks in much of the downtown, would turn angled spaces into parallel spaces, and then create a protected bike and other vehicle lane as well. And so those are 3 pretty big things. Talking about going that down Main Street, down Lebanon Street, and then while we're doing this, we're also talking about doing the same thing on Allen Street. And there's some plans that also talk about leveling out between the street and the sidewalk as far as not having a curb height, so that you can close the street more easily. It doesn't have to be closed permanently, but it could be, but also could not be. But it would make it easier to have events and do things, because you wouldn't have the curb issues that actually create a pretty big constraints when you're having events and you have to figure out ADA access and getting equipment in and out of areas. And so we're talking about that on Allen Street, and basically improving the downtown, not just for the mobility and transportation piece, and also to allow more retail and restaurants to have more space outside to do outdoor vending, which is something that we get a lot of questions about, but also to allow us to improve the downtown to have more events. So like, for example, if we're going to do this, setting posts down on Allen Street that we could hook all sorts of things up to, so we could attach speakers or lights or sunshades or rain shades or stages or stuff like that, and just make it a little easier to have more events in the downtown. So that's the sort of general idea for that project. We would lose a little more than a dozen parking spaces, most likely, about 14, 16, 18 spaces. That is the same number of spaces that currently we would lose if all 4 parklets that we allow in the downtown were all out. Those are the things that are in front of Lou's and Murphy's and whatnot. If all 4, it's about the same number of spaces there.
Alex, so what is the success? That's the long-term plan.
Yeah, in the 600,000, we would basically break off a piece of the plan, because we're not ready to do the larger project yet, and we would need approval at town meeting. So we can't even begin doing the planning and design work of that project, really more than what we've done, and so sort of the back of the napkin stuff, until we get approval at town meeting, because this is going to have to be bonded. And so we don't have funds available. This is too much for our capital program, the whole project. So the idea is that we would take a piece of the project off, probably the reconstruction on Lebanon Street, that we would take a piece of the project that we know we're going to do basically anyway, and do that with that money, so we can basically get moving on that. Alternatively, we could also commit the money. You know, we could sign a contract, but we would it would be a little more complicated to do it. But we basically find an early stage piece of the project and use this money to start that.
Okay. Jenny, since we just talked about.
Yeah, I was just wondering what that process would look like. Like, I think the ARPA decision is coming up pretty soon, would be the idea. And like, what would we see and when? Like, I'm not sure what you're referring to on like what would be done on Lebanon Street. I'm just wondering when would we be looped into like these design decisions?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I would think, well, so I don't have a date for that. If we approve the money I don't know, if we approved it today, I would imagine that, we're not going to do any construction over the winter. So I imagine that we would do, some planning and design work over the winter. We would start that process, and I would think, we would try and, I'm not sure. I would ask Pete, I don't know if we'd break off a piece and start it that much sooner, or if we would just allocate and commit the money towards a piece of the project. So I don't know
It's
if
just
any of that
really hard
would
to,
begin
like,
before town meeting of next year.
It's hard to talk about a project when you don't know what it is. It would seem that some presentation of what the project would be important.
Yeah.
So like there's been presentations on the stretch on Main Street and presumably something to talk about there. Or there could be conceptual discussions about what could be done on Lebanon Street or what would be on Allen Street. It's hard to approve a project that you don't even know like what the real concept is, you know?
Yeah, and this is
Go ahead.
less approving the project, but
Yes.
approving the ARPA allocations
Right.
for the project. Right, and
So
so
I-
we have to do this outside of our budget process, so
Right.
we're not
So
ready to
if
begin
the-
the project.
I would like want to know the objective of the project, right?
I think
He's kind of outlined
Yeah,
that too.
is there something other than what I just described? And I know you were in some of those meetings a couple of years ago. Lebanon Street was part of those discussions as well. So there's been design and conceptual drawings that have been shared in the past.
Oh, I'd love to see those. If you could share those with me, I would love to see the conceptual drawings about Lebanon Street.
Yeah, those were all done a couple of years ago in a whole bunch of public charrettes.
Could you share them?
Sure, yeah, I wasn't.
I have some on Main Street. I don't have any for Lebanon Street.
I'll
I'd
send
love to
whatever
see
I've got.
them. And I
So,
definitely
Jenny-
don't have any on Allen Street.
We
Yeah.
didn't do that for Allen Street.
The
What's written in this paragraph is not clear to me what the objective is. It's like when you say, I want to make, say, parking easier. That doesn't mean much to me because it has to be easier for some people and then harder for other people. You know, like, I just would want a clear objective so
But
that we would have.
What is an objective from your, like, what
Yeah,
is the
that's what I'm trying to
thing, what's the
figure out.
answer, I guess, 'cause I'm not really sure.
Because I have no idea what's on Lebanon Street. I don't know what the objective is. Like you talked about scooters, I haven't seen any incident reports about scooters on Main Street mentioned too. I don't think we're solving for safety. This paragraph is written about safety. I think we're solving for access and comfort.
And safety. I mean, this is something we've talked about in the select board meetings
There's
before.
specific safety issues about backing into a crosswalk. The speeds, thankfully, on Main Street are very slow, but people still feel very uncomfortable biking there, and occasionally people get hit walking across the street. It is not a high-ranking part, especially for all the activity, of where people get hit in our town. It's just not. I would have better numbers about how many people walk there and don't get hit if our counters worked, right? But a lot of people don't get hit there based on the reports that we've been given. Other places like along Lebanon, there are safety issues where pedestrians are hit near the church and near Crosby and also near the high school, right? So there are different problems and I just want to make sure, because if we're solving for safety, usually the answer is to slow the street down. That street's already very slow. If we're solving for placemaking, it's just you have different design constraints. If you're talking about traffic barricades, like I would say if we design this well, why are we designing beautiful traffic barricades? We ideally wouldn't need them unless we think like there's gonna be like a bomber.
Can I suggest something?
Like it's just like a statement and a narrative about what this is.
Okay, Jenny, those are
Yeah.
those are great points, and I think it's completely multifaceted. And this brings meaning. Downtown is falling apart. The sidewalks are falling apart. That needs to be addressed.
Yes.
That's going to have to be bonded. There's a lot of things going on. So, just one second, Carrie. So, I would, and we are up against a bit of an issue with respect to allocation. Therefore, I don't think we need to act on this tonight. It might be nice to see those drawings, but on the other hand, I think we're going to have to proceed to a large extent with allocating the money and then doing the design afterward.
And I think we're all talking about the exact same
I think we are, yeah.
project. So that all has the same objective.
Your head was handled for.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I don't want to lose this money. So the 600,000, can you, redoing the entire Main Street, is how big a project? My concern is, we say this is going to go toward Main Street, and then that's an X $1 million project, and we don't get it approved, and therefore these funds don't get used. And maybe you're saying the discrete element might be Lebanon Street, which is a $600,000 project that is in some way related to the Main Street project. So you can hive it off, and if there's no, support for the larger project, that can still go forward. Is that?
Yeah, the idea would be to spend it on something in such a way that if town meeting didn't approve the larger project, that this money was still well spent on something that we would have done anyway.
Right.
I'm not sure what that is going to be for Pete, our Public Works Director, to say, here's the highest priority things that are the shortest, that are the easiest to break off from that, and it might be the sidewalks on Lebanon Street. I'm not sure off the top of my head which aspects of the project it would be, but I think from our perspective it doesn't, unless I'm wrong, it doesn't really matter. It's basically just putting the money into defraying part of the cost of that larger project, but in a way that we don't lose anything if the larger project doesn't happen.
Which I
that's kind of what you're saying? Or exactly what you're saying?
I think that's what we're all saying.
Yeah, right. I think we're all in violent agreement here.
Nancy and then Kari.
Yeah, my comment just was, at the end of the evening, I am really concerned about spending this money. Don't want to lose it, do want to spend it. We know lots of, concrete and asphalt people with whom we could write, honest person's contracts and say, this is our intention of when the money comes in, but we have to show Concord that we are doing thus and such before December 25.
Yeah, and I think, I'm happy if the select board said, Alex, work with staff to figure out a way to commit this money for this larger project in a way that doesn't lose them, that we don't do something that we would regret if we didn't do the larger project, but we don't really care what it is. We could definitely go find that. If you all want to sort of review and approve whatever segment of the project is, I could try to bring that back for the next meeting. I think when I talked to Pete about it, I think it's something on Lebanon Street, sidewalk, concrete related, but
I don't think that's going to be.
That's not the issue.
No, I think that is the issue, but that's what Jenny's bringing up, and it's a valid point. But on the other hand, we need to get this done, and if you can allocate it and then figure out exactly what it's going to be precisely.
And I can certainly come back here and tell everybody, but if the direction is we want to use this money towards this larger project because we agree with these goals, the mobility piece, the safety piece, all these different pieces, but don't spend it on anything that we wouldn't normally do.
Yes.
If we weren't doing the big project.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure we can thread that needle, and if not, I can come back and say, we put our heads together and we couldn't come up with anything. Here are the two different things. Yeah. I think we'll be able to, and I can still come back and say, here's what we're planning to do.
Why don't we do that, Alex? Kari.
So Kari Asmus, and I'm thinking about some past Finance Committee conversations. And first of all, I have to say that the Finance Committee was very enthusiastic about having the ARPA funds used for capital projects, such as many of the things here on this list. And I remember last year when Peter Kubacki said that maybe we were going to have to start putting black asphalt to patch sidewalks, that we were very concerned about that. So I think that if you have a conversation with him, he may have some, and that was a matter of trip safety, uneven sidewalks, etc. But thinking about going ahead to our next meeting, I think that there could be a question of on the memo, the last page, where it shows the prior projects, and those were indeed, in one of the slides of last year's budget presentation, although as noted, it wasn't a part of the budget. But this last page then has a second column where it says amount in fiscal year 24 budget already. And so that's a little bit of a, but it's not in the budget. You know, for example, the phone system upgrade was 50,000 and it was all ARPA and not at all capital reserve fund. If you go down to technology upgrades, it was 55,000 in ARPA, 8,800 in the budget. So I mean, it is a little bit mix and match. The town digitalization project, I don't think there was anything in the budget. So I was just wondering if there was some clarity about what that second column is, because most of those are zeros, but some of them, you know, had some small amount, but I definitely could not find that 15,000 anywhere.
That column, I mean, yeah, I probably shouldn't have even included this because I think it's kind of confusing, but that, yeah, that column was meant when we were doing these projects, when we were identifying these projects in the budget last year, some of them had funds that were in the budget, plus funds that were ARPA funds, some didn't. And so that's what that column was meant to identify, if there was already money that was being budgeted for that project, which in some of these cases there was, but that may, yeah, that may not.
But the majority not, so either if we could update that column.
I would take that, I think that column is not adding any help here. That, you know, that shouldn't even,
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry if that was confusing.
And then the other question was, you know, it says on page 1, begin to solicit quotes and estimates. The finance committee at one point was looking at all the policies that the town has, and I was wondering whether or not we had a purchasing policy. You know, the school, when they purchase anything over a certain amount, you know, you have to go through a certain amount of rigmarole, which does not happen instantaneously. It slows things down somewhat. So I'm concerned because of knowing of the school's policy, whether or not the town might also have another policy that means that getting things done by December 25th is even going to be more challenging than you think. But I don't know. Does the town have a policy when you purchase?
We do. I would say it is not been reviewed recently and applied consistently. Ellen, I don't know if you would disagree with the framing of that. And I would agree that some of these projects will take a little longer. You know, getting all of these by December 25th, you know, I think it's just basically whatever we come out, because we don't have to do all of them. We can pick ones out and approve some tonight and not approve some tonight, right? And so basically what I would do is we would start with the biggest ticket items first and start going down the list and getting those out the door and try to get them. But, you know, it could take a month or two to solicit quotes, or if we have to do any formal bidding.
So just specifically on the purchasing policy, my understanding is, and I do have one, it was written, but it has not been reviewed and adopted by the select board.
And Ellen, that reminds me, you and I have met, you know, there are a bunch of policies we need to bring to the board that we talked about. I think I have notes on that. So, yeah.
Very important project that needs to be
done. Obviously we need to get through the near future, but you know, we should make that one of our goals for.
So may I ask what you think the time frame is to, if the policy were to be followed, in a range of what's the quick list and what's the?
You know, Kari, I can't just off the top of my head address the policy. Certainly, standard purchasing policy would be for anything over a certain dollar value, and certainly the 600,000 would be that you would have 3 competitive bids.
Okay.
And that they be evaluated, and that the policy would not state that we're required to take the low bid, because that's not always the best one, but that 3 competitive bids would be would be obtained. I'm not sure, and Pete would have to comment on whether that's a really large time constraint. I think it's on large projects like this, it's probably practice that we are doing.
Yeah, and I would say for that level, it's more standard to bid, like you said, for most of the things that we have in here. Attempting to solicit, you know, 2 quotes or 3 quotes is usually the practice, at least. You know, if you start getting into the above, and again, this is not, should be more tight than this, but when you start getting into the above thousands and 10,000, and so I think for most of these, it would be going out, getting a couple estimates or quotes. It we have a form that you can put that on. And so that's not as long of a process as doing formal bidding,
Okay.
which that would take, that would take a solid 2 months.
I would,
Yeah.
So, Carly, that's a great point. So really, we should act on this tonight, basically, as much of it as possible.
As much as people feel comfortable doing, and we understand, I know we had some conversations earlier today, Carrie, with you, it is not ideal, the timing of any of this. I think we would love to have more time to review some of these things and do some back and forth. We're sort of working as fast as possible, getting everything to you all, knowing that we've got this sort of deadline at the end of the year, and that the risk just goes up in a way that we don't really know. There's no way to predict, there's no way to know. But yeah, the most that people feel comfortable moving on tonight.
With respect to I'm just stuck on the $600,000 because it's an order of magnitude greater than anything else, and not stuck on it, that's concentrating on it. And where does the board think we're falling in this regard? Jenny, you have some concerns?
Well, I think it's really important to move swiftly on the ARPA funds. I think it's really exciting that we'll repair, potentially our sidewalks on Main Street that haven't been repaired since the 80s. I think it's all really important, but I think it's really also important that we're looped into the process.
Yeah.
And that everything is shared. This is the first I'm hearing about what would be done on Lebanon, but I don't know what that is. That sharing needs to happen, and so approving the idea of going after this, a visionary project that makes our downtown multimodal and inviting for people of all ages and abilities and modes, that's great. We need to do that.
Okay.
But we need to then have specifics and be looped into that process.
That
Okay,
makes sense, yeah.
so I think at this point, is it fair to say that we can approve this
I
one?
just have one quick question, the home internet grants,
Yeah.
and this is not
I was-
a finance committee thing. Is that going to be needs or means tested?
That's something we have.
Because it doesn't say one way or the other.
No, it doesn't. And actually, to be completely forthright with you, Alex had that in there. I suggested it be removed because there are.
I think that's the one that I see that sort of has a lot of questions about it.
What question specifically, Garth?
So
by the way, do you have? I can't remember where you are in that. You have access, don't you?
Yeah, not reception with cell phone, mobile is still bad, a lot of, but anyway, but I'm not going to apply. It's just
that wasn't my question. I just can't remember where the break is.
I'm beside the reservoir, in particular.
Yeah.
So, and I've had a police officer come and say, can I use your phone?
Oh, you're kidding.
So that was a couple of years ago, so hopefully it's better. But I was going to say that there are sometimes limitations, but on use of public funds. But if this were going to be going embedded through the general assistance, Jen Gantrich, I think that maybe would button things up a little bit. Just
Alex had that in
language.
there. I asked that he take it out because it affects. We've had so many complaints, so many people unable to do homework, unable to do their jobs at that the north end of town, that I thought it would be more. There is no good solution, meaning I don't mean monetarily, there is no good solution from a technical standpoint, short of throwing down $100,000 so that Comcast can wire you in for one house. One house.
And then of course some of the properties are not supposed to be year round, and it just gets, when you get out, with the forestry zone, there are some homes that are grandfathered that can be for year round, but if people are, it just, that was the one.
Kari?
Yeah.
It's only $10,000 too, though. So
I'm just saying.
Just for whatever it's worth, I'm happy to think through if we get the okay to move forward with this. Happy to think through different implementation mechanisms, and if doing it through Jen is the best way to do it, even if there's not a means test or an income-based application. At least putting it on the plate of the person who might be connected to folks who might need additional assistance might help.
Fine.
So I'm happy to think about ways to do that.
Maybe, does the board agree? I mean, I asked Alice to take it out, but maybe we should, let's put it back in. I think, does that seem reasonable to you guys?
Yes, it does, and I would like to add that the people from whom we've heard the most vociferous comments, you two just kind of joked about the $100,000 Comcast house, but the people that we've heard from are the Hanover High students who can't do their, and the Dartmouth professors who cannot correspond with their students.
And I have
Jen Gandrish will never, never interview those families.
And I have physician colleagues who can't do a lot of their paperwork.
Telehealth, yes, right.
And we are working on, we're working with Comcast. There's a couple houses that we think we can get that we can push them to connect, where they've got just like 1 or 2 poles in between where their lines end, which seems kind of crazy. But and then the other is with Lime Fiber, who is applying for grant funds on Hanover's behalf. So hopefully we can fix that more permanently.
Okay, so are we making progress here? I think we're okay on the 6. I'm not. Maybe we can call for a vote at the end of this, but I'm just getting the sense of people. Yes on the $600,000. Yes on the internet grants. The ones that are a little bit less controversial, I think, are going to be the records digitization, if that is the proper word.
Mr. Chairman, we have
Please.
one fire and 2 police requests, which I think make a lot of sense.
Yep.
Okay.
And would like them to be.
Yep. So you're talking about the fit test, correct?
Yes, and
the dispatch.
Yes, and the dispatch, and the portable radios.
Okay. Yes, that's on page 2.
My question about the fit test mass machine was just how often it's used, and is this something that could be shared?
Yeah.
Or
So a couple things.
Somewhere else at DHMC or what? Like what?
No,
I know very little about these machines.
I'll tell you about public. I won't tell you about DHMC.
Go on. So even without that context, so a couple things. So one is this is a required piece of equipment for the SCBAs, which is their breathing apparatus for when they're fighting fires to deliver oxygen. So they need a piece of equipment to do that anyway. Otherwise, I don't actually know where the nearest machine is for doing those.
We don't have one.
But yeah, they would have to go to some other fire department to do that. So that's something we definitely want to have in-house. The added benefit is that we can also do it for N95 masks, and they're happy to do it for community members as well. I would also just add that in a situation where you needed to be doing things like that, that's not a time when you want to be sharing equipment across geographic, like that's the kind of thing, if people need that, we're gonna need it and the hospital's gonna need theirs. And so that's probably not the kind of thing you would want to share.
So you're saying you do this for more than just the firefighters, for like the regular public?
Yeah, they offer
during like a bad air event?
Yep. Yeah, they're happy to do like a community event. They would be happy to do it for all the staff. So it has kind of multi-layers uses, the most core use being for the SCBAs, which is something that that we have to do for them, whether it's in-house or somewhere else.
Okay.
So the SCBAs could be shared with other.
Those are their equipment that they wear.
Right. So would they get tested for that?
Right.
They use a machine, and then say Lebanon Fire could use this machine and
we could certainly share that. Yeah, exactly.
I was just wondering about that, because it seemed like most of the time it would be used whenever you get a new firefighter.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Or if somebody.
I think you have to do it yearly.
Yeah, or once a year.
Or when new equipment is purchased. Yeah. But yeah, it's a pretty small, but I think these are the kind of things that having a couple of these floating around the Upper Valley is not the worst thing in the world.
Good thing.
Yeah.
We could lend ours out to DH at a very reasonable price.
Well, not that reasonable, Nancy.
That's why this.
Okay, so I think we've picked off the less controversial ones.
Right.
That leaves us. Is downtown placemaking controversial? I don't see it as.
I don't think it is.
Can I check that one off too?
And this is another one where as we go forward here, people have ideas for stuff,
Yep.
So
that leaves us with.
I think my only idea that came up in our meeting was if there was like a pilot kit, like a pilot program kit that could be tried downtown and then other places as well. That's something to think about. And then we also talked a lot about, like
when Parks and Recs came, they had to, some of the stuff they had, some of the stuff they had to kind of invent.
Right.
If we wanted to try, say, traffic calming measures out in Hanover Center or Etna, it would be nice to be able to like take something that we designed somewhere else and say, hey, let's test this. We have these things that work as really nice protected bike lanes, these other things as sitting spots. But making it so that community members can initiate pilot programs, I think is really important, and it seemed to fit within this idea. I wanted to put that, and then the other idea was we talked a lot about signage and honoring like the Appalachian Trail, and I know there are a lot of individuals interested in this, so I just wanted to make sure that kind of thing and wayfinding was
Wayfinding and signage is on the list, yeah.
in there.
I would like
I'm sorry, Jenny, we done, I'm sorry, you done, Jenny?
That was it, yeah.
I would like to pair downtown placemaking with the downtown public internet. I think those two match well, and that downtown
Sure.
internet question is a biggie.
Sure. Agree? Carrie, Jenny?
Yeah, a small thing on the internet, I think it might be worth, I mean, there are certain networks that work significantly better than others, and I think a lot of people come here using AT&T, and that's like the
I
least
think
coverage and the
this is more Wi-Fi than
It's the Wi-Fi.
mobile. That's stupid.
Yeah.
Than cell, sorry. This is Wi-Fi.
just public Wi-Fi.
Plain old Wi-Fi.
Yeah, just
Okay.
Wi-Fi,
Yeah.
internet, yeah.
Yeah, no, we're not tying ourselves to a vendor. I mean, a cell service.
And there's a potential partnership, we're meeting with folks at
Oh yeah,
government without it.
there's like the issue though is that people's phones don't work is part of why.
No, yeah.
Oh, that's how it's written. Sorry.
That is part of the,
Well,
that's part of the issue.
That
I mean,
people's phones don't work and they can't
but-
pay for parking.
But if you had
I-
Wi-Fi, you could
If
do
you
that.
had Wi-Fi, you could do that, but in addition, the town maybe could publish like some maps so that when people move here, they don't stick with the service that stinks.
Yeah. I don't.
There's a lot of.
I don't know,
Can we
want to
can we
get
Yeah.
into, I mean, but I'll also say, we're trying, you know, well,
It's
we're pushing both AT&T and Verizon to do better here.
Yeah.
But there's not a lot of optimism, but we'll see.
Yeah, let's move forward. We all know that cell service is terrible here. Which I think leaves us with the how, the two issues with the how. Alex, can you just speak again to with the plan for the Zoom room? Is there a public demand, not demand, but need?
Yeah, so the Zoom, and that is it is probably gonna come in a little less than that. That was the most amount when we looked at it, that we think it could cost. I think it's probably gonna come in a little less than that. But it would basically to replicate all the technology that is in the mayor room. So that is the stack of computer equipment, the screen, the integrated speakers and microphones, the cameras that can track people, all of that equipment. The idea is to build out a second version of those. We've definitely run into issues where that room is pretty well booked, and there are times when I know we've tried to book meetings in that room where we're not able to, and part of the issue is that we don't have a lot of meeting room space. This room is limited in its functionality in some ways, and also is this is a difficult room to keep open all the time for larger meetings of this size, and so both of these together. In the Murray room right now, the tables are too heavy to move around, and so this is 18 tables. Jane, I know you had a question about that. Of the tables that can be like easily moved and flipped over. It's the same tables that are in the police department training room that are pretty easy to move around, and so it would totally change the use of that space. There are definitely groups talking to the Howe Library that want to use that only will use the Zoom room and not the other room, so that one sort of sits empty more often than not.
Okay.
So I have a problem with the phrase that, so town meetings can be moved from the boardroom in town hall down to the Howe. And you know from 2 weeks ago that both Joanna and I kind of sat up when you said that. I am definitely not in favor of leaving this location for town meetings, and I'm also definitely not in favor of cutting this room up into a lot of smaller offices, definitely not without professional, space designer being involved at the very minimum. But if we're going to do this with the expectation that town functions are going to be moved down into the how, I'm on the how board too, so I know their needs are very great, and I know that this money would be very welcome, but not under those circumstances.
The way I meant to write it is that it would allow that change if we made that change, but it's not expecting that change. I mean, we're going to be talking about that in CIPC. We have some pretty major space issues. We have employees sharing offices in this building. We don't have meeting rooms. We are often triple booked in this room. Where I'll have 7 people in my office. And so we'll definitely be presenting some options about, we've got to fix that in some way. And this would be one of them, but certainly this project doesn't require that. It just allows that if we decided to do that. But it is not being proposed for that purpose.
Thank you.
Yes. Having a second Zoom room would be helpful for many different boards and committees and community groups. Regardless, yeah.
Just if there's a way another Zoom room could be maybe even better than the one in the mayor room. The mayor room's been really useful, but there's been times where it can capture the presentation and not like the audience. And it would have been like during the housing opportunities grant, it'd be nice to get both. It's also like not super transparent as to how to use.
There's some
like
feedback here.
Yeah.
I think we can,
work on that.
we can move
If folks are
forward.
interested, we can definitely get,
I have gone through then and checked everyone as seemingly acceptable to the board. Have I misspoken in my checking?
No.
Okay, so do we need a motion?
I think there should be a vote.
I think there should be a vote. Is there a motion to?
Move to commit to allocations for ARPA spending as presented.
So second.
Great, any further discussion? And I said it this time, Jenny.
Yes, you did. No, I mean, I had written some questions. I'd still love the answers to the questions that I sent, if that's okay. Just some of the trade-offs and cost, and there's just,
I think we need to get these out.
I don't think we need to go through
I
all
saw your
those
memo.
right
I think
now.
we need to get these out the door.
Right.
And then,
But as a follow-up to this
Sure.
discussion, and if we vote to do this, I would still like the answers to some of these questions. So is that
I can try to
okay?
figure out some of the ones we didn't talk about tonight and get you some stuff, and we can go back and forth. And then I think by the time when we start getting to projects, we'll obviously come
Yes.
back here and up to you all,
Okay.
and there'll be opportunities
So,
for feedback.
I'd like to call for a vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, great.
That's great.
Good, I'm glad we got that done. I'm really glad we got that done. Okay, board, I need your advice with respect to what we should talk about next. The two issues I think we need to discuss, let me just minutes, are the Selectboard Goal Setting Workshop discussion document and the tax rate guidance. We have Ellen and the Select Board, the Finance Committee here. Potentially we should go forward with the tax rate guidance and then go to priorities. Does that seem? I don't see a disadvantage to that.
Yeah.
I think there's advantages and disadvantages. We have people here. We
I'm
don't
guessing
want
they're gonna, I guess the finance committee will stay for the goals too, but could be wrong.
they can do whatever they want, and they're welcome to do whatever they want. All right, so let's, Ellen, you've got looking for it. So, you sent a very nice memo. What we're trying to do here is, part of the job of the Select Board is to provide tax rate guidance, and what that means is there is to get a comprehensive look at what we're forecasting with respect to revenues, expenditures, and ability of the public to I kind of want to use the word to pay, but basically some index of CPI and other indices of where the public is going with respect to tax rate changes and ability to absorb or not absorb them with respect to goals that we have set. So what we've typically done in the past is get some idea of where we expect our revenues and expenditures to be. Not able to do that with incredible precision, but get an overall 30,000 foot view, and then look at the ability, look at the what we're doing with CPI in particular, but other indices of ability of how the citizens are doing with respect to the economic standpoint, and move forward with there are times, move forward with a recommendation. There are times when we have come up with a specific number, basically not to exceed X amount. There are times we've created more of a range, and I think this is a year where we're going to fit into the latter, I predict. So how do we want to handle this, Ellen and Alex? Do you want to discuss the memo that you created, Ellen? Is that reasonable?
Yeah, if you want to, yeah.
You wanted to kick off, Alex? And
Yeah, I think, I guess broadly speaking, maybe a couple introductory comments, and then we can go through all the different elements of the forecasting tool that Ellen's put together as well. I guess the one thing that I just wanted, I'm sure Ellen will say this too, but is, there's a couple things. We talked last year a little bit about modeling and forecasting, and one of the things that we intend to do at the end of this budget is produce a version of this based on this year's budget that we can roll over to use in next year's forecasting, right? And so that part of the idea here is that there's a lot of front loading of assumptions about the budget that we don't know. Some we have some idea of, but especially going a few years out, it starts to get a little fuzzier and fuzzier. And that really we want to start on kind of more solid ground in future years with forecasting, so basically what we approve in March or April of this year, we would use in, let's be optimistic and say September of next year when we begin the budget process, that it would really only be a couple months old at that point, instead of starting from here, which is not quite having that same foundation. I think all that considered, there was some, I'm sure Ellen will mention this too, there were some very helpful forecast tools that I know Carrie worked on, that I know Kari worked on the Finance Committee, so that helped us kind of get started a little bit here. The only other thing I'll just say, other than that, I think this is the beginning of the process of improving sort of the forecasting, but is also the two scenarios that we sent around. I know we put this in there, but those were not, actually I just made the mistake myself, those are not two scenarios. Those are really two ends of a scale that we tried to create to just show really the best case scenario and the worst case scenario from a financial perspective, but we were not proposing a solution, scenario A or scenario B. Those are meant to bracket basically what we would expect. It wouldn't be higher than X and it wouldn't be lower than Y approximately. I just wanted to make that clear again if that's helpful, but Ellen would definitely be best for going through all the different elements that we included.
Sure, and I can go ahead and do that, and I would like to reiterate what Alex said, and that the model that Kari put a tremendous amount of time into, and then Carrie, your input was a really good jumping off point, because it sort of took all the detail that was in the budget, really consolidated it into some groupings that certain assumptions for whether it's an inflationary factor or increases due to for compensation could be applied to. And I agree with Alex that these are sort of two different models with different assumptions, and I see this as our input but maybe even the start of a conversation. There are so many elements to this that are still unknown, and I would really start with compensation, where compensation represents 70% of the appropriations. And as we are, moving through the compensation study and really looking at what compensation for, fiscal year 2025, I think the range that we chose to use in the compensation is driving to a great extent the range that you're seeing in the tax increases. I appreciated the questions, Carrie, that you raised and Jenny that you raised, and I do think there is some refinement of this. Having said that, I think it's a great starting point for the conversation. And so I'll just walk really quickly through the assumptions that we did put into the both models. And under compensation, we made the assumption of a 10% increase in the high appropriations model, and a 6% in the low. I really want to make the point that compensation is capturing all elements of salaries and wages, and that would be cost of living, and it would be merit increases, but also any market adjustments that fit into this year's budget guidance. I think the next element that we broke out was healthcare, and again, the guidance that we've gotten from Health Trust for this fiscal year 25 is a not to exceed 13.1%, and we basically took a look at putting the fully loaded 13.1% in the high appropriations model, or I guess I used 13%, but in the low we scaled that back to an inflation rate of 9%. So again, I believe we went into the 2024 budget cycle with a guidance of not to exceed from Health Trust of 10%, and we did land just a little bit north of 6% when our rate was actually set. So I think that's just sort of, again, trying to apply some of that logic and thought process. I think that the 13.1%, certainly 100% of our healthcare costs isn't medical, and that 13.1% is for medical, but medical does account for 90% of our healthcare premiums. Just get back to my Word doc. Taking a look at the benefits, about 80% of the way these costs were categorized are the contributions to the New Hampshire retirement system. And so this rate they're set for 2-year periods, and so the rate in place for 2024 is the same for 2025. So the modeling was based, of course, that scales with compensation. So the benefit rate increase is sort of matching to the compensation increases. Another large portion of expenses is our utilities. These are Alex's words, but without a magic 8-ball. It's difficult to really project where those costs are going. So in the 2 different models, we used a 10% increase on the high side and a 4% annual increase on the lower side. For insurance, we have been experiencing 7% increase rate for property and liability and 8% for workers' comp. And those increases were assumed in both the high and low calculations because that, we did not vary them between the two models. Another area of significant appropriation and the potential for more is under the capital reserve funds. Under the low appropriations, I've modeled in the investments that are planned in our current CIP model, and that really does only take into consideration repair and replacement. It's not a forward-looking document, and so for the high appropriations model, we chose to model $350,000 a year, sort of building up to $1 million future investment. That was definitely just a little bit of a placeholder, but to say, okay, if we were going to plan ahead for an investment that we would do through a new capital reserve fund, what would the impact be on the tax rate? I'll just, as we're talking about appropriations and inflation rates, I did take a look at a couple different measures. The CPI and then as well as the CPI for the Northeast. Those two can vary. Taking a look at the inflation rates that were assumed in both the high and low models. We did use 5% for 2025 and 3% going forward. That's something that should be refined because I think 5% for 2025, there's a lot of uncertainty, and the New England or the Northeast CPI has been going up. We've seen that on the upswing from a low of 2.2% in June up to 3% in September. And if we look at the uncertainty in the market, I feel comfortable with using a 5% rate, but for the high appropriations, that should probably be higher in the future years. One of the things that we can take a look at in the model is that inflation rate does drive both increases in appropriations or expenses, but also drive some of the revenues. So when you flex that inflation rate, sometimes it doesn't have that great an impact on the tax rate. As I was sort of redoing some of the model, it actually decreased the tax rate at times, not material, but those are some of the interdependencies on the in the model. I can stop and see if there are any questions on the appropriations, or I can take them all at once. What's your pleasure?
Ellen, you skipped over debt service.
Oh, I skipped over debt service. Wow.
Well, it's such a minor detail.
Wow.
I was just curious.
I guess I skipped over it in my commentary.
No, your commentary hasn't.
No.
We've been reading along with you, and all of a sudden, boop, you went down.
Oh, debt service. I did. I went right past it because I thought I did. Perfect. Yes, really important because the two models are, as we talked about earlier today,
yes.
Nancy, this is where there's a very significant difference in the two models. And on the low appropriations model, that basically projects out our current debt service with no additions. one of the reasons why, again, you're not gonna see any impact, for instance, from the very large water sewer bonds that we have on the horizon is that those will be in the proprietary funds, and this is, the tax rate setting is dealing with just the general fund. The high appropriations model does include a couple of very large projects that would be bonded, assuming that that would impact bonding in fiscal year 25 for 10 million and another for fiscal year 28. So this is, they're really meant to represent two large-scale infrastructure projects, whether that's roads, sidewalks, reconstruction, significant renovation to a facility. In this process, we didn't identify or attempt to propose what those projects would be. You know, I think some of the work of the CIPC will bring some clarity as well as some of the goals. The calculations do assume, I took a look at the New Hampshire Bond Bank rates. You know, this may be conservative on the rate because as we talked about before, you know, the loan rate at this point would be more like 6.5, but these calculations do assume a 29-year term at a 5% rate, which is what the rates were in July, the last time the New Hampshire Bond Bank did a bonding.
Okay. Wait, Nancy, did you have a question? I'm sorry, I can't remember.
And to the extent that the debt service facilitates growth in housing units,
good point.
That's not really factored in.
I agree,
okay.
Yes. It's not, and you know, I think one of the questions that Jenny had raised is sort of why in the model do we have sort of a flat addition to the net assessed value, and that's just, you know, for modeling purposes. It's interesting to the extent that the investments would add to the base. It would depend on what it was. If it's roads and sidewalks, it wouldn't add to that net assessed value base for the tax rate.
Are the assessments only done like every 5 years, or are they like redone? Or are they updated every year?
Did you ask about the assessment?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we reval every five years.
Okay.
But the grand list is updated. NORM provides an update every year that we have to use the net assessed value in our budget submissions. It's basically the denominator. So that gets updated every year. Yeah. Then.
So this will only increase if within 5 years if somebody builds something new?
Right.
Right?
Or
is there,
it could increase based on increased property value. It doesn't have to require new construction. If the sale prices go up and the assessments go up, the net assessed valuation would also go up.
but do the assessments only go up every 5 years, or do they go up in between there?
Individual homes are only reevaluated every 5 years, where you're readjusting the ratio between homes, but the total grand list amount is every year.
So when do the assessments change in between those 5 years? Is it an addition, or is it like somebody built something, or is it for another reason? Is it?
Jenny, what are you trying to get at? What's
I want to know when the net assessed value goes up. Does it go up every 5 years, or does it go up?
No, it's going up every year. That
Every
number
year.
is updated.
Yeah.
That's once a year, and we have to do that for the budget, and that could go up from addition. I mean, if someone pulls a permit, there's multiple ways that your property value can go up.
Mm-hmm.
But the reevaluate, which is the re-equalization between the whole community,
So
that happens.
but it goes up. Multiple ways are different ways of adding something new to your property.
right?
Or
is
the
it some-
property gaining in value over the prior year.
And
Like if a property was sold, you know, and the property was worth 800,000 last year, but it was sold for $1 million this year,
I didn't think it went up.
the assessment could go up. And that's part of what's actually on the other document, which is the ratio, not to muddle things up more, between sale prices and assessment values, which is a whole other
So when a
thing.
house sells, that assessment.
It doesn't trigger it
can
automatically.
change. It can change.
It could change.
Okay.
Well, but in terms of tax capacity, it is new construction, additions, renovations.
Okay, thank you.
So the rest is the pie, but it doesn't affect the tax carrying capacity.
And our assessor updates annually.
And we just had a townwide assessment.
Right.
Where if your neighbor's house sold for $1 million, all of a sudden your $600,000 house, next tax bill became an $800,000 house, even if you did nothing because you're living in $1 million neighborhood.
Right. You good?
Yeah.
Do you want to keep going?
I can keep going, sure, and then take all the, because I know the finance committee is here
Absolutely.
with us tonight,
They
so if that's okay, you want to do all your questions at once? Sure. Okay. All right. Sort of the combination of looking at the property tax and the grand list or the net assessed value. Again, we in the high appropriations, more conservative revenue. So we used the increase of $15 million a year. So the range of $15 to $18 million a year was provided by Norm. And again, that's an estimate of what he expects to see. I have to say the estimate that I requested from Norm was for 2025. We have conservatively taken it out through the forecasting period of the 6 years.
That's what Norm gave you, because it seems kind of low. But regardless, let's keep moving, please, Ellen.
And it, you know, again, we can refine that, and we would certainly benefit from a higher increase, but that is the range that he did provide. And then in the model, the property taxes are solving for zero. You know, that's getting us to revenue that meets our appropriations for the general fund. For state aid.
Sorry, I laughed at state aid.
Oh.
Sorry, it's just a habit.
Well, you know, it's interesting because it's always at risk.
Yes.
Right?
That's why I'm laughing.
Because, yeah, and so, you know, I've sort of said that we've taken a conservative approach.
That's wise.
With just applying an inflation rate, but that could actually be an aggressive approach depending on what happens in Concord. So, you know, that's definitely, you know, an item that is at risk. I think we have good resources to do additional research with input from NHMA. And really trying to understand what, you know, what we might be seeing. But it's always, you know, it definitely is always a question mark. For the fees and fines, that I also applied the inflation rate to forecast that out. On outside revenues, these include special details, dispatch fees to other towns, and short-term interest. I did scale all the elements except short-term interest at the rate of inflation, but the higher revenue assumption includes an increase in 2025 of 150,000. I have to say that the base model, and we had the conversation about increasing the 2024 revenue by the 150,000 that we included in the revised revenue estimate. The base model didn't have it in 2024, so I've added it to 2025, and that's and then in the lower revenue, I actually stepped that down and backed out 75,000 of that interest in 2026. So just sort of recognizing that if we're looking at inflation rates of about 5%, and if the short-term interest rates track to that, having it in there makes sense for 2025, but to be more conservative, to start to back it out also makes sense. I think a key element of the two models that differ radically is the undesignated fund balance usage. And I know long-term that the guidelines, the select board guidelines discourage use of undesignated fund balance to manage tax rate increases. Recently, and we would argue appropriately, there has been use in recent years. The modeling of the higher revenue includes continued fund balance use through 2029 at a step down level. The lower revenue includes phasing that out by 2026, so a much more rapid decrease, and you can really see that reflected in the higher tax rates. So I think it really highlights the need for all the way throughout the budget process, really analyzing the impact on the undesignated fund balance. I think in the 2024 budget process that was a scramble in many aspects, this didn't have the level of attention that we need to give it. I did take these numbers and did some projections out of the, sort of what this usage means to the undesignated fund balance as a percent of, sort of on the Hanover calculation. And as you might expect, it puts us in a position that is below guidelines of 10%. So again, it's
I'm sorry, can you say it again?
so if we have the continued high use of undesignated fund balance, so that's where we need to really be looking at that analysis throughout the process.
Absolutely.
For other revenues.
So, excuse me, Ellen.
Sure.
We were going to take questions at the end, I guess. I can.
Well, actually, pretty much the other revenues were scaled at the inflation rate, so.
Just getting back to the undesignated fund balance, because that is so important, as you highlighted. I see you zero it out. What is that in 2027? Do you have, and this is probably a difficult calculation, do you have a sense of what that does to the level of the undesignated fund balance? Did I not see that, or am I just?
No, I didn't. I did the calculations, but I didn't present them. Mm-hmm. But if we if we actually have used on the model where we're using $400,000 of fund balance in 2025, again, based on the appropriations assumed in this model, that puts us right at 10%.
Which is not where we want to be.
And if we use 300, it would be pretty close to the guideline, I think, right?
It would, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but that would put us above 10%.
But our goal is
10 to 15.
10 to 15
we
are
want
the
to be
guidelines.
closer to 15. Okay. Alan, that was, you're done at this point, correct?
I am done.
Okay.
I'm open. I am here for questions and.
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you, Ellen, and thank you, Kari, thank you, Carrie, for all the work that's gone into this. This is very helpful, and I think gives us a platform for discussion. Speaking of discussion, you know, I think, you know, my sense is we're going to end up with a range. We're not going to. Certainly 11.3 is a pretty scary number. 4.9 is a lot less scary, but how should we start discussion? Carrie, you want to kick us off?
Sure. We have a lot of competing demands on our finances. And it's both operating and capital. I'll start with the capital because maybe it's the easier, which is if we think through the incremental demands beyond our normal capital replacement and maintenance, that is some number, and you've embedded some assumptions here, but if we're going to make progress on the master plan, et cetera, that is kind of something that we haven't always in the past. I think the capital spending on discrete projects has been more episodic. This is, I think the intention is to be a little more methodical, but that does create, you know, a higher glide path to taxes. You know, the operating side, we're in the middle of negotiations. It's difficult to talk about that. But I think the comments that were made last year are no less true this year, which is that we feel like there are material, particularly at the low end of the wage scales, issues to address that will be costly to address. Having said all that, you know, we need to deliver a tax rate increase that's not only palatable to you know, existing taxpayers, but also one that doesn't exclude more people. And we already face issues where it's difficult to move here. Yeah. We don't need this to raise the gates on our gated community any higher. They need to come down. So, and that's a tricky thing too. So it's, I think we're faced with a challenge. There's a very wide gulf between 4.9 and 11.3. I don't think it's as easy as splitting the difference, but I do think we need to be very judicious in this coming year. And so I know part of the, thank you again for all the work that you've done, and Kari also, you kicked this off in some respects with your modeling. But I think the message of an exercise like this is not only for those who are listening and the public, but also for internal budgeting purposes. And I think we do want to create optionality in terms of decision-making going forward, where if there are things where we need to say, you know, we need to deliver you know, a little bit tighter, that we know what the priorities are, and we know what the things we need to fund, and the other things that maybe could be pushed to a following year, or maybe not done. So I think in this whole process internally, that would be very helpful to have some hierarchical cut points for spending thresholds.
A wish list.
Yeah.
A cut list, unfortunately.
Or cut list, wish list, you know, whichever way you want to do it. But to have that pre-thought out, so that if we think that we need to make a change, we don't have to then start from scratch and say, well, how would we do that? But we kind of, so just some thoughts there for our internal process.
And I think that's a really good suggestion, and I think that, you know, we do want to take a practical approach to the budget, but we also want to put our department heads really in the driver's seat of really thinking about what they're hearing from the citizens, from the public, what's needed, and really, you know, really come forward with creative suggestions, but by ranking them in priority or time frame, that would help us to be able to, you know, put them in, take them out, and understanding. I mean, I think everybody knows that we don't have unlimited resources and that we need to be judicious and thinking about what we propose for spending. But at the same time, I think we really want to motivate our department heads to think about, you know, how they can run their departments optimally and to serve the citizens. So I think that there's a real opportunity there. I think the budget process at its worst can be stifling, and at its best can be controlled and inspiring.
Yeah, and as you just said, yeah, that was well said, Ellen. As you just, you know, just to highlight what Kari was talking about with respect to the master plan. I mean, there's been a lot of community effort on so many different levels with respect to where this, and also tying in our select board retreat that we had recently, and some of the goals that we're talking about. It's, you know, it's both a difficult time and an exciting time because there's been so much community effort going into this, and I would hope that would translate to appropriate creativity in the budget making process, which, as you said, can be very stifling.
But I think what will be especially helpful for Ellen and I too is wanting to make sure department heads show us everything they want to see, even if they know there's no chance it's going to get funded this year, for example, or they think there's not a great chance. We still want to hear that from all the department heads, and we want them to talk about it with each other, so we can at least get ideas out on the table, because we also may get to a point where a department head might say, well, I've submitted my budget, but here's this nice to have. And we look and say, that's not a nice to have, that's a mission critical, we need to do that thing. And then we might go back and look through the budget and say, actually, take this other thing out and include this. But if we don't get that out from department heads, we will never even have that information in the first place. But I think that's part of what we want to try and get, go broader rather than narrower, and then we'll whittle down from there.
Yeah, let's do it better. Kari, just 1 second, Kari. I guess, please. I know you're going to have. Come on up.
Finance committee members, if they have, at least in the past, you know, this is the time when finance committee members are invited to the table, and I know that I have sort of some like big thoughts that I hope maybe would help you think about what.
Come on up to the mic, Kari.
I would feel much better if my colleagues.
That's what you're getting at.
Yes, that's what I'm getting at. Because
We need one more chair.
no,
Please.
yes, and Ellen should, yeah, I can, okay, I guess I can stay. Yes, and you can stay, because you're. Board event, I think everybody.
Yeah, please just introduce yourselves again.
I'm John Nolan with the Finance Committee.
Our newest, one of our new members, but incredibly important, and the type of fellow who just rolls up his sleeves, as we know from the CIC.
Welcome.
Kari Asmus, I don't know how many years now I've been on the Finance Committee.
Well, we were on the Finance Committee together back in the mid-2000s.
That's right, when I was on the school board and you were pre.
And then I was actually chair of the Finance Committee back then.
That's right.
Believe it or not.
And Greg.
Greg Snyder, Vice Chair.
Kari, before you get started, could you remind everybody, the viewing public, because I'm sure there's millions out there in TV land, and the board, the role of the Finance Committee, the charter?
Yes, we are guided by a charter that was readopted in 2004.
Excuse me. Guess who presented that to the town meeting? That would be me.
And it was a very lively discussion, because there was a concern that perhaps the Finance Committee was going to become less prominent and have less things to do. But it actually did help sort of solidify the role of the Finance Committee is advisory. You know, we are not here to tell you what we think the guidance should be to staff. You know, our job is to listen to what you say, use our expertise because we spend a lot more time in this domain than you can because you have so much on your plate, and react and give you things to think about, and, you know, perhaps at times say, you know, you might want to tap on the brakes there, you know, if we think that what we're hearing doesn't really sound saleable, but it's advisory, but yet independent of either the select board or the school board.
Yeah, I remember that town meeting in the old Hanover High Gym before the renovation, where I had to present to the town meeting, and boy, there was a lot of discussion over there. But I think it's worked well, as you just said.
So I'll just go first listening to your discussions and thinking about where we have been, where we want to go. I guess I would encourage you all to think about what is your, you know, you've laid out, and I think that actually the number one goal is there. What is your number one goal? And I think it's there in the memo, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but, you know, staff compensation is very much, you know, up there. We heard tonight, and we've talked a lot about undesignated fund balance, and that if something isn't done about that, we will get to 10% very quickly. And just to underscore the importance of having a healthy undesignated fund balance, you may all remember, maybe not everybody, but it was around, the undesignated fund balance was around 20%. And then came one awful reappraisal where there was a huge number of abatements, and all of a sudden we were down to 10% in 1 year. We also have had other instances where we went through a lot of undesignated fund balance when Reservoir Road washed out. And so this is just, you know, lessons from the past that we can't forget why it's important to start clawing back.
And also why, I remember when the undesignated fund balance guidance was 5%.
Right.
And why it's increased
It used to be
up
5
to
to 10,
15. Yeah.
then 10 to 15, and sort of, in recent years, it's sort of been a de facto, you know, as close to 15 as we can keep it. Because we have seen in the past 10 years that there are the events that can wipe it out significantly. So that's just, you know, so sort of why that maybe isn't a priority on your memo, but why, as you're putting together the budget, it might be. I think the other thing that we always think about is timing. We know that this year, again, you have your priority, we don't really know where that's going, but we know that we've just talked about 1.2 million that we are putting forward in ARPA funds that actually start to approximate some of those goals, contribute to some of those goals. So the question would be, would this be the year when you need to put, you know, more frosting on the cake? Or is this the year, you know, I mean, yeah, you know, you're committing 1.2 million, does it need to be, you know, 1.5 this year? Because, you know, one of the things that you started to talk about, you had this discussion about when does the net assessed valuation, you know, go up? And on an annual basis, it is typically how much new value is built, renovated, etc. And it's whatever exists on April 1st. So that's why for this coming year, even though we sort of think, oh, well, maybe there's going to be all these new apartments, you know, Norm is looking at what's going to be built by April 1st.
Yeah.
We're entering winter, not much is going to happen. But I have to tell you, in one of those years when you were on the finance committee, when our net assessed valuation was much smaller, there was still 1 year when the net assessed valuation grew by 50 million in 1 year for Hanover. So you do have those years, and you know, we may be coming to one of those with the rebuilding of dormitories and so on. So the question again is, when you already have some frosting on the cake this year, is this the year when you need to be thinking more about that? Can you be thinking about that more for one of the future years when we are closer to dorm renovations? And again, I think that, the undesignated fund balance is something that I was glad to hear the discussion about at this point, it's like, I think when the chair used to sort of look at what reasonably is needed and throw that out as a number to get a more focused conversation going. So that's not our job. But I guess before I sort of turn it over, I just would like to know if either of my colleagues have big picture observations that they want to share or concerns.
My thought is to have not big thoughts presented, but to have small thoughts presented. And looking at the goals and priorities and in relation to the tax rate guidance, I would suggest that we, because of just what happened at the beginning of the meeting, we had the residents from Willow Springs come and talk about wanting a sidewalk that's been requested for, I think she said, years.
Long time.
Yes.
So therefore, I would say, small bore, let's work on the basics. Would not the sidewalk be a basic?
And actually, it has been funded.
It's been approved, yeah.
But it really is but that aside.
But it is a wonderful point. I understood.
Okay, and I also would say that you need to keep in mind that we are a town of less than 9,000 people.
Yep.
We're not some big deal here. We're a very big deal within ourselves, and honestly so. But we're not some place that's 2 or 3 times larger than we are. So therefore, we really do need to have strength of prioritization and making sure that we take care of the basics.
I agree completely. Which brings us, your latter point is so well taken, meaning we are what we are. I think part of our select board goals that when we had our retreat earlier in October, it was pretty clear that a lot of what the select board would love to achieve, if I can use that word, over the distant future, is to make the town much more, or somehow get the town to be more accessible than it is becoming. Carrie said this a little while ago with reference to the gate, Hanover's becoming a gated community, which is what we definitely want. It came up very strongly at our goal setting retreat that we really want the town to be more affordable, more equitable is the word that came up quite frequently, and make it more sustainable, because it's changing pretty dramatically over the last few years. It started with COVID. It was accelerated by COVID, excuse me. I kind of lost my train of thought in there, but I understand completely what you're saying, except with the addition that I don't want to use the word development, but addressing the revenue side of things, potentially by addressing infrastructure and allowing further accessibility and housing opportunities, may increase the bottom line as well. Therefore, make us a little bit.
It may not too from the school side.
You mean increase the bottom line or the top line?
I'm sorry, what did you say, Carmen?
Well, I just wanted to make sure that everybody realizes that because of the Dresden Compact, There's basically, if you add one student to the 6 through 12
Yeah.
school system, there's no marginal cost. It's the whole thing. It's another cent on the tax rate. It's $25,000 approximately. So it's because maybe some other communities, you would have the hope of saying, okay, we're adding to the net assessed valuation, and that will help our bottom line. It adds to the revenues without raising the tax rate too much. But if any of those units happens to have a student grades 6 through 12, it takes, I mean, and no one unit is going to produce $25,000. Well, a very big home might produce $25,000 in tax revenue in 1 year, but it's you're shy of a dormitory where there are no students in the public schools. Any growth in housing is not going to be pure relief on the tax rate, is the thing. So we need to be cognizant of that and not think that that's, I mean, there are reasons why we want to grow, but tax relief isn't necessarily where it is the reason. And so I'm not trying to say that I'm anti-growth. I'm just saying we need to be careful of saying that that is our, where we're going to be getting more revenue from. Because there's going to be additional expenses that are
Understood.
really big.
Understood. I'm sorry, did you?
I
think Corey.
Let me start by, I want to first lend my wholehearted support to Greg's earlier suggestion that one of your priorities be better financial management systems. Because without having the ability to monitor what's going on in real time, we find ourselves sort of making guesses and not necessarily.
Yeah, I think we took that suggestion to heart.
Good. Second thing I would ask is a question to the Selectboard. What is your sense of what the tax rate, the ideal tax rate would be for the community? We talked about the high side of the model that Ellen's put together being too much. The low side is better, but is that acceptable to the community? Something lower desired by the community?
Yeah, I think that goes back to our previous discussion with respect to, I think expectations are, at least what I'm hearing, and I want to hear from other members of the board as well, is that services are still very much in demand, and pushing them even further would also meet community goals, which is what I'm hearing. So I think, the lower end is certainly a nice number. I don't think my reading of what's going on is that pushing it even lower, for example, down to CPI would not meet community expectations. And therefore, just extrapolating a little bit, I would,
for services.
For services.
My question is not so much what community expectations are for services, what are community expectations for the amount of tax they'll pay? And
I don't think
those may not be related in the community.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. I was equating them, however, myself.
I mean, the ability to pay or the desire to pay.
Right.
What will the community, yes, the desire to pay, that's part of it. The ability to pay could be, could be much higher than,
But much more the desire to pay.
But you're reluctant to say, let's go for 11.6% increase because you have some sense that the community wouldn't buy that even if they really want all sorts of services they're required to pay for.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm getting at is what do you think would be the right number for the community, their expectation for what they want to pay?
I think historically,
go ahead.
double-digit
Yeah.
suggestion is an anathema. You know, just sort of psychologically, 10, you're kidding me.
Yeah.
You know, 9.5, oh, you know, so it's that kind of circumstance. You said to others, don't necessarily tie services to the desire to pay, but one thing that we've learned over time, and this is my 12th year on the select board, that we've learned from our fellow citizens is we really like living in Hanover, and we really like living in Hanover at this level of expectation. We want to go downtown and not slip on the ice because you haven't, you know, spread cover on. We want to be able to park in downtown because you have, in December, because your crews have been paid such that overnight your front end loaders and your dump trucks have gotten rid of the snow on Main Street. You know, we want to be able to continue to see the library staffed where it is because the town pays for the salaries of the librarians. And so time and time again, and of course the schools are their own freestanding gem, if I may say, but they have a large part of our tax bill. And actually most people don't open their tax bills and look at school and town, you know, separately, although we kind of, in an informal way, talk with one another about, well, what are your increases going to be? Well, what are your increases going to be? You know, so we do like to be able to mirror town and school increases such that one is not way out of proportion to the other. So I think my answer would be not in the lowest, but don't tread on that double digit at your peril.
I mean, we haven't. I'd have to go back and look, but even pushing 7% is a really high number.
So yeah, historically, a 4 to 6, 6.5 kind of have been usually where this board has landed.
And the second question I have for you, and this may be an easy one to answer. I just don't have the history. In looking at the revenue lines, I don't see anything from Dartmouth College, payment in lieu of taxes.
Dartmouth College, I mean, they obviously pay taxes on dormitory, dining hall, thank you, and some other facilities. The payment in lieu of taxes.
I don't think there is.
Yeah, no, there isn't one.
It's not shown, but it's the silent part of it is that it is not a something that would balloon the rate that properties you know, contribute. Because when we look at the grand list, we're talking about, well, what does Murphy's pay, but we're not talking about what, you know, the call center pays, sort of thing.
Right, but no, I'm thinking something more formal, not necessarily based on, well, it would make reference to a hypothetical property tax, but Dartmouth, not only owns a lot of property in Hanover, but it creates the need for a lot of services.
Yeah,
absolutely.
People
right. Fire police, yeah.
Right, so has there ever been any formal discussion with them about a payment, not necessarily tied to property values, but a payment in lieu of taxes that would recognize the extra demands on town services?
Not that I'm aware of. They are, everyone is quick to point out that they are the largest taxpayer in the town by a pretty large margin, but they do not have a payment in lieu of taxes.
And I know there was a recent article in the New York Times highlighting NYU and Columbia and New York City, you know, talking to them about pilot payment in lieu of taxes. But it, to my knowledge, there has not been. I know that when the hospital left, there were discussions between Lebanon, Hanover and Dartmouth associated with the hospital, and I think that there was some discussion of contributions of things like ambulances. I think there were some, and I don't. It's a while ago, but I think at that time there was some sort of pilot, and but I don't know what the legacy of that, if any, is. Norm would know. He was actually the assessor in Lebanon, and so he was a part of that mediation that actually took place in Boston, and it was a multi-month mediation process. So there is a history there.
And every year, Norm Bernish, our assessor, our town assessor, meets with the head of Dartmouth Real Estate Program, and the two men, go over properties and so forth. There was a very serious conversation when the country club was decommissioned. And what does that mean that it's not a Dartmouth athletic facility anymore for their golf team and so forth? And so we do have, so that property, for example, has joined our, it's joined our roll of taxable properties.
Nancy, there may be a little bit more. I can't remember all the details off the top of my head. I don't remember where that actually completely settled. But regardless, there was a large discussion on it.
Large discussion, yes.
It would be good to see the details that Norm produced about Dartmouth. I'd like to.
With respect to the current,
Yeah.
the current assessment?
With regard to what, Jenny, specifically?
Oh, which stuff was made taxable and which stuff was made tax exempt? That was.
He has a whole notebook on
Right.
Dartmouth, and you'd have to go through it.
Yeah.
Well, I asked the question just to prompt your thinking about that. Especially given that we're now about to adopt a new master plan, which is going to, in many ways, transform the town, not just in the benefit of the community, but also in the benefit of the college. And it might be appropriate at this time to ask them to up their game in revenue participation.
John, are you thinking about what's come out of like Yale and New Haven and some of the discussions going on at Cornell and Ithaca?
I'm thinking in particular what's come out of Groton, Massachusetts.
What happened there?
My wife is the CFO of Groton School there, and the town of Groton, Massachusetts is not shy about putting the arm on Groton for additional revenue when they need to do something new for the town.
And to add context, I think if Joanna was here, she might remind us that Dartmouth put forward $5 million to the construction of the new middle school and renovation of the high school.
Yeah.
Right.
3 or 4 ladder trucks ago, they made, it was like our first ladder truck or something, but because it was so much for buildings there that they made a special payment for a ladder truck. The, not Tansy track, but the other conserved lands along Maybrook, they donated, at first anonymously, over $500,000 to, because they really felt that was an asset for their student body. So, my experience in the past 25 years is that Dartmouth does step forward, but it tends to be for, yes, these things that they view as also benefiting, them in some way.
And there is the adage, you don't get what you don't ask for.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
So that's all I'm saying.
John, your earlier question about select board and perspective on the tax rate, the undesignated fund balance, one thing we can't afford is another reservoir road that we don't have the financial resources. So I think tackling the undesignated fund balance is important, and roughly $100,000. So last year, I think it was $435,000 the use. It was the 3rd year in a row. This coming year would be the 4th year in a row in which we're using undesignated fund balance to a significant degree. And I think each $100,000 that we drop it is like 0.8% on the tax rate. So you could, if we wanted to meaningfully drop it to say 250-ish, you're talking about a 1.5 roughly on the tax rate. So while you might be able to say, 4.9% is the low end, but that's still using 400,000, I think, in Ellen's math. But if you wanted to cut that down to 250, you'd be looking at something higher.
I think that's a bit.
Serves as a rainy day fund.
Does, yes. Yeah,
And we've really needed
It's
it.
raining a lot more these days,
Yeah.
in case you have.
These are all wonderful questions. I think, it seems to me like we're going to settle on somewhere, guidance to Alex to give to department heads is somewhere using the 4.9 as the low, and I would say I'm just going to throw out a number. 7 is a high, but I'm just throwing that out there, but something to work with.
kind of what I would have said, 5 to 7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could probably round 4.9 up to 5 pretty well.
Yes.
Sorry about that, Al. Jenny, Nancy?
I would have said 7. I mean, I think that if we can prove as a town we're here for our citizens, that there's no, aside from Ms. Masters' comment that once again we have not put a sidewalk in Verona, I think for the most part our citizens are pleased with the way the town is run and what the town does for their dollar.
And the master plan
Is ambitious.
is, yes. If we could do everything right now, we'd be living in a wonderful place.
Right.
I think we are living in a wonderful place.
And by the way, the master plan, one of the sort of the rails on the master plan is that we are going to develop where water and sewer are both available. So in other words, we're going to build more densely or improve property so that there's greater density in those areas. And so that means that places that people say, oh, it's so wonderful out in the hills of Etna. Well, the master plan says, yes, it's lovely out in the hills of Etna, and there is Etna's future. Although, we do talk about, the village of Etna and so forth. But as I say, that's one of the guidelines in the master plan. And it's all on our website. Great reading if you're, not able to sleep at night. Right.
It is an amazing document. Any further discussion? Anybody? We don't typically vote on this, but we can kind of give you a sense of.
Can we mutter towards it?
What do you think, Alex?
Yeah, you said 13 to 15%?
You're hearing well.
And just get the undesignated fund balance of 15.
Oh, that was right, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Ellen and I heard 5 to 7 kind of range. I think Ellen and I can
I thought it was 5.7.
5.7. Oh, I thought it was 7.5. Right.
And with as you just said yourself a little while ago, with a wish list, with getting the department heads to really think creatively.
Yeah.
We're not going to be able to fund everything.
No, but I think we can work with that, and we've got a lot, especially on the compensation side, to do this year. But I'll just add my thanks for you all, because I think that these are kind of difficult, but also a little uncertain times. We don't really know what's going to happen with the economy in the future, or with all sorts of other things in this country. And I just think it's very forward thinking to invest back in the community in the way that we're talking about tonight, and that there's a lot of very belt tightening that is already happening inside this building. We have a pretty frugal set of staff and pretty department heads that are pretty careful with their spending. But I think that the range that you've given us hopefully will allow us to come back with a budget that invests in our staff, which was, I'm sure we'll talk about in a minute, but definitely the number one priority that we heard during the goal setting discussion, and probably the most important thing that we can do to kind of ensure a good future for the community. And so I'll just express my appreciation for that.
Thank you, Finance Committee. It's, as always, much appreciated.
Yeah, thank you.
And you know that every single meeting, you're always welcome.
Is it no thanks?
And
Our door is always
I read the
open.
memo on the goals in your retreat very closely, and I will
I'm sorry,
watch
Kurt.
the rest of the meeting.
Okay.
So I was just gonna say, you were saying, oh, they're gonna bail on our discussion, and I am, but I wanted to let you know that I read the memo, and I will watch your discussion on
Thank you, Karen.
the change.
Okay.
Thank you.
At least that gets our TV ratings up a little bit.
Get up to 3.
Who are the other two?
Sorry.
Oh, wait, the other guys. All right, so that leaves us with, the things left on our agenda are
Good night.
these goal setting workshop. I think we should just tackle that right now. And then there's a consent items and things like that.
Thank you, Greg.
Thanks.
Thank you. So let's turn to the goals and priorities for FY 24-25, the document that Alex produced for the members of the viewing public. What's left? When did we meet? When was our retreat?
The 18th.
Thank you. I knew
Whenever that was.
Yep. On the 18th of October, we had a retreat, which of course was an open to the public and noticed meeting. We held it over in the R.W. Black Center. It was very productive. I think we were there for how long? 4 hours?
3-4 hours.
Yeah. We only played one game, which was really fun. The beginning one.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we learned about each other a little bit.
We did.
Two truths and a lie.
I found that fun. But more importantly, or as importantly, we did get a chance to talk about broad strokes, what we think is important moving forward. And I personally found it a very useful exercise. It allowed us to do some free-form thinking, much like the master plan, which we use as sort of a base, a platform to work on. The master plan, as we've talked about a few times, is an amazing document, and I encourage everybody who's watching to go to the town website. It is there. It's linked right on the front page, and it's a lot of reading, but it is good reading. But of course, we can't implement it all at once, and we wanted to come up with ways to really set larger goals with respect to where the select board really thinks we should be moving with all the moving forward while looking at all the constraints that we're looking at. We talked about a lot of them today. Some of the really universal things that came up, I've sort of articulated a little bit already with regards to having the town of Hanover be more accessible, have a lot more, have some sense of, or try and make an impact on equitable housing, and through all of that, work within a sustainable format. Alex took our goals and what we talked about and wrote up a 3-page document, which I think does capture very well a lot of our discussion, or it captures very well our discussion. There are a lot of things that we talked about which are not included, but I think the priorities are here, and the utility of this. Alex, why don't you speak a little bit to what you envision the utility of this document? Sure. That you spent? I know you spent a lot of time on this.
Yeah, I think, I mean, the main goal here is that what we want to do is, there's a joke in, I don't remember which Seinfeld episode it is, as any good budget discussion begins. And there's a joke where Jerry talks about you paint over your apartment every year and you can feel it just getting a little bit smaller. And I feel like that's often how municipal budgeting works, is every year you're working off the last year and you're just kind of adding another layer. And what this is meant to do, at least as a first step in a multi-year process of building this out more, is get us to step back, talk about what the goals of this body are, so that I have the sort of clarity to go back to department heads and not only guide as far as budget requests go, but over the ensuing couple months, Ellen and I are going to be spending time sitting with department heads and making decisions about what things get submitted to us and what things we are going to recommend get submitted on to you all. And so to have a little bit of guidance from you all about what things are most important and what you want to see would help us not make that sort of guessing game, but just to have more clear expectations from all of your perspectives. And one thing I'll throw out there, just in thinking about this a little bit, and a couple conversations today, I would throw out, and Athos, we haven't talked, well, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but in reading this, if you substitute where goals and priorities are, the word aspirations.
Yeah, we did talk about this.
And I hadn't really thought of that word yet, but aspirations to me is maybe a little more responsive to what we're looking for.
To me, and this is less goals than more of a really long mission statement or vision statement. Yeah. I've kind of forgotten the difference between the two.
What about the videos of my long hair?
Yes, I know. A little bit of an in-joke. Sorry, public. And if you just look at the bullet point, excuse me, not the bullet points, the bold points, the numbered points. Thank you. I'll just read them out. One, continue to enhance investment in the organization and its staff. 2, continue to work on ways to make Hanover more affordable, accessible, and resilient for a wider range of people. 3, continue to expand the ability for people to move in and around the community safely and economically without having to rely on personal motor vehicles. 4, reevaluate what and how community services and programs are offered. And that one, I'll just read finish the sentence. With an eye, I think you should have bolded the whole sentence out.
Yeah, probably true.
With an eye towards ensuring that anyone from any economic background can access any community services. 5, create more partnerships to assist in multi-stakeholder long-term planning, budgeting, and community engagement. Basically, that's work on public engagement. 6, continue to add layers of community engagement, interactivity, and transparency. New layers. I think just reading the big bold points, I think you captured a lot of our discussion very well. And what I would like to come away with this meeting, from this meeting, is I don't think we need to vote on this. I think we just, just like we did with the budget guidelines, I think we should sort of express our support or express our disagreement with where things are going with regard to the plans that Alex has for moving this forward. There's certainly one could certainly take this and edit it. Peter Christie, our former chair, was one of the world's best editors of public documents, and I hope he's watching right now because
we're sending this to him.
That's right. That's true. That's right. Maybe he'll watch it later on CATV. But as a whole, I think it's a fine document that I would express support for. And just to speak to some of the specifics which are not in here, for example, Greg's point about, there's no way in heck anyone can argue against I forgot, I'm trying to read in my notes as to what, oh, it's up there, strengthening processes towards the town's accounting. I mean, what the word process was. Strengthening processes towards the town's accounting systems. You know, that is a specific goal which, and we can certainly come up with many more that are not in here. And I think we should definitely look at our policies with regard to that. And I'm going to do it a little digression. Ellen, you and I had a phone discussion, I don't know, a month or so ago, and you were talking, you know, you had pulled out a lot of policies which in your mind need readdressing.
Yeah, they need to be updated, many of them are from 2008,
So,
2011.
right. I think I may have made a list of some of the ones you came up with, or may not have. Is this, I'm not sure we need, you know, given the broad strokes that this is looking at, I want to take to heart, as I said, Greg's specific recommendation. May we look at policies in that regard?
Yeah, I think that,
Do you want to come up?
Yeah.
Because I know Kari's going to be watching.
Sure.
Hi, Kari.
I'll just speak to me in my way of thinking. I really appreciate Greg's suggestion. It's quite tactical.
What do you mean by that?
I'm sorry?
What do you mean by quite tactical?
I mean, it's sort of, when I think about the goals, the other goals, it is a vision statement. It's, you know, you'll have to figure out what actions to take to fulfill those. And I think that thinking about the accounting system and procedures and policies are action items. It's possible they could fit into a vision statement, but that's where I think that idea absolutely needs to be supported. I think it would have to be rephrased to really fit into a vision statement.
I'm not sure, you know, in reading this for the fourth time, I don't think it does fit.
The financial control?
Oh, maybe in number 6.
Yeah, no, it's in here. It's not, well, I'm looking at it right now, because I do think this was meant to be captured, and they're in 5A. Is continue to iterate the budget and financial reporting and controls processes that began changing last year. But I did just add a clause to the end of that for whatever. So it says to make the process more interactive, transparent, and clear for members of the public to follow important themes, and to allow more accountability and clarity in the town's financial policies and procedures.
Great.
And so maybe not the best written, but I think that does capture, and it's super important to put that in here because it's a goal of ours, and I think it's a goal of yours too, and we shouldn't commit to it.
Absolutely.
And it really supports all the other goals, really. You know.
Ellen, just to get back to my specific question, with regard to policies that we were talking about, I'm sure we have something in this regard that we need to bring back and relook at. Do you not agree? Do you agree or disagree in terms of it being there?
Oh, yes. Yeah. I mean, I think it definitely, again, having written policies and procedures that are select board approved, I mean, I just think it clarifies.
I'm sure we have it, but we need to.
We need to update them.
Yeah.
So to the point of the policies and procedures where we know there's a lot of work, I mean, I think to the extent that we know that even if it's sometimes mundane, that there's work that we have to get done, I always think it's nice to get credit for it, right? So if you know you have to do something, let's put it on this list because we're going to do it anyway, and let's get credit for it, right? I mean, if this is a little bit of a sales document, which I think it is, right, then let's make sure that if there's, again, stuff we need to get done. I know I'm not going to belabor it. I know I spent time today with both of you, but there were areas around strengthening town governance, if you need a banner to put it under, but and there were some items, and also around town efficiency that I'd love to see incorporated in the document.
Probably have it in
Yeah,
there,
so
you know?
the ladder, I think, is in, both of those also were meant to be captured. I thought the ladder was in here in one of the sections about more technology and community services, but more, yeah, maybe not.
I mean, it was the benchmarking, the regional hub, the school, town economies, and process improvement suggestions, solicitation.
So it's in 6 in the paragraph, but it's not broken out. It says, you know, as we work to address prior systemic financial issues and improve service delivery and efficiency. But I think if we're saying, you know, continue to find ways to improve how efficiently services can be delivered to members of the community. I don't know if that's too vague.
Well, yeah, I mean, it could be through benchmarking, through assessing regional hub model, school town economies. Anyway, those are just some avenues.
Yeah, and I think those are definitely meant, I mean, you know, in number 5, we kind of talk about working with other stakeholders, and I think there is a build out of regional, in one of these, there's a build out of regional services. Yeah, in 3D. But yeah, that's definitely something we want to capture, which is we want to be more efficient in how we provide services. And I'm also going to add one that says, you know, something about, you know, invest in, I don't know what you would call this, Carrie, governance, you know, sort of some sort of foundational, because it's not just the select board, but we've talked about this with all of our committees and boards, is getting organized with terms and appointments and, you know, that all that stuff should be clean and clear, and there shouldn't be any questions about is it right, is it wrong. And so these are sort of foundational, they're not really policies. Platform. Invest in.
Process improvement is how you put it, if that captured it.
Yeah,
You know? Is
I mean,
that not
I guess I gravitated to platform because I still think we ought to at least consider whether a technology platform like Board Docs could really serve all of our various boards and committees in terms of you know, delivery of documents and et cetera, et cetera. There's a number of advantages, but we'll save that for another day.
Yeah, but that's okay. So what I've got is continue to invest in good governance policies, procedures, and platforms that help bring efficiency, transparency, and professionalism to all of the town's boards and committees.
Sure.
Is that close?
That's good.
Okay.
Yep.
So bored.
Are you saying you're so bored, or that you're?
I am not bored.
You get a cookie for that. Sure.
This is positive.
Pavlovian.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Good boy. Good boy. I've already had 2.
The concept of access and service for people.
Where are you looking?
Just the idea that, sorry, I grabbed the,
Thank you, Carrie.
it's number 4, sorry, it goes on different pages. I know you're talking about access is hit with housing and multimodal, but the idea of like community services and programs offered, a lot of access and services is infrastructure, and I'm not sure that that's captured. Maybe people think it's captured in the idea of multimodal, but it's not really in the multimodal one. Like sidewalks is a service, right? You need, in order to get somewhere, particularly if you have some sort of mobility disability or processing disability, you may very much need a sidewalk, right?
You know what you could do?
So it's like the idea is in there and programs and services, but I don't think the language connotes that. in
Jenny, I think the
context.
bullet point could just be, I don't want to sit here rewriting the whole document.
No, but there's
the bullet
a few
point-
points like
The
this. I
bullet
mean, I think
point,
we're,
but I think to address Jenny's point, all you need to do is make your for the bold, and the whole sentence should be bolded.
yeah, I did
Add-
change that.
Add to economic background, any economic background in whatever language you think is appropriate there, Jenny.
I just might throw out, number 4 is not really meant to address things like sidewalks, but that is all in number 3. Right, that's the one above it, is about mobility and about access to infrastructure.
Good
Number
point.
4 is really about community programs.
Fine.
So if there's a bullet point maybe in number 3, that is something,
Yeah, 3 does have that, you're right.
yeah, I mean, I could see something here about.
Point D here kind of covers, I think, what Jenny was talking about.
Yeah, but it
sorry,
sounds like there's
the
also a capital
sidewalk is
piece.
coming to mind, because, sidewalks are always on my mind, but, there are other infrastructure that provides service.
Why don't you just,
I mean, we talked about, facilitating cellular service, internet service, for the same reason that people are disconnected.
Yeah.
That's not a sidewalk. It's not multimodal transportation, and it's not what people would traditionally think of as a community service or program, because it's infrastructure. But a broad interpretation of services would include infrastructure, and I think
Jenny, how would you make that stronger?
I would add the
very
word
specific.
infrastructure somewhere.
Okay.
Because
Yeah,
when
I'm
we're
looking-
evaluating equity and services, and this idea of equity and services, if we're evaluating equity and services, you want to be looking at different populations and seeing if they have the same access to services that other people have.
All right, I got
And
it.
we're not disproportionately providing, services to some people and not others. This comes up,
Got it.
So, in
Got it.
number 4, in the paragraph, it says this is meant to ensure that we don't just keep moving forward the same types of programs, but understand the evolving needs of the community and provide programs, resources, activities, events, and services specifically designed to meet the needs. I'm going to say provide programs, resources, activities, events, services, and infrastructure.
Sidewalks.
Yeah,
The other word sidewalks.
that's
Just
good.
infrastructure.
That's great too, as many times as we can.
Okay.
Yeah, I just think it's an important kind of source, and
Sure.
the way the paragraph was unfolding, it was getting lost.
Okay.
So, what time is it? 10:20.
Starting to die.
Yeah, no. So I think we've done a lot of good work. Do people agree with me or disagree with me that this document, while we can sit here and edit it forever? Lisa, look like you got another point there, Jenny.
No, I was just reading and making sure that the access is also tied to that,
Okay.
that's all. So it's
That we,
basically access and
that-
equity.
what I'm suggesting is that we agree in principle with this, have Alex move forward with it with the goals that he outlined earlier. I think you can change the title too.
May we email?
I like the word aspiration.
And can you, and would you be able, I know you've made some revisions.
Yeah,
Would you
I can send the final, I can
But
send
the
this.
document is not hugely different from the way it's.
No, not very different at
The
all,
other thing,
no.
we spoke about the master plan a lot, and it's
Yeah.
not referenced, and I
That's a good
really
point.
think that should really be, that was a big jumping off point.
Yeah.
And,
Agree.
I don't want this to.
Can you put
I
that?
don't want this to feel like we're
Jenny?
trying to come up with something that's, different than, or.
Yeah, agree.
unique
Would that, I
to
think
our-
that would fit well in the first page.
Yeah, and then
Yeah, I
there's
mean, it's discussed a little bit on the first page. We've got a little bit of mention in 5B, but also,
Alex-
maybe what I can do is take number C, or 3C, whereas a more aggressive implementation of the town's complete streets and Vision Zero policies, but maybe change it to say more aggressive implementation of town policies such as the master plan, complete street and Vision Zero. Does that help a little bit?
Yeah, I would also put it on the first page.
Okay.
Stronger than
There's
you are.
also, there's 2C is talking about different districts and density, and that's a lot of, because the master plan very much addresses land use.
Yeah.
It
So I can
seems
say,
like we should
as per as per, the new master
Okay.
plan.
I think, Jenny, if it's
Yeah,
okay with.
that's just one that, like, that's like the purview of.
Why don't we have, I think we should curtail more discussion.
We have the ability to send.
Yes, and
suggestions.
Alex is gonna send it around
One of my
again.
favorites is our neighbors in the river.
What's that?
One of my favorites is we're working with our neighbors in the river.
Oh, well, sometimes.
That would be me.
Okay,
The,
so,
Yeah, because any, like, things like that, I mean, I think we got some good edits in.
Yeah.
And I can send this back around, but if people have any other suggestions, especially any typos or anything, send them over.
so do we have a consensus on this?
Definitely.
Jen?
Yes.
Carrie?
Yes.
Great. So I'm gonna check that one off. Alex, is that good?
Yes, I think we can, yeah.
So next, we're
Gonna set public.
gonna set a lot of public hearings, for the
Oh, yeah.
27th of, November, the 12th of December, and the 18th of December.
The
December.
11th of
11th
December,
of December.
What did I say?
the 12th.
You were just reading the 12th and 11th. It's okay. You're all good.
Whatever.
Whatever.
And if anybody has them in front of them.
Do you want me to?
Please make a motion, Nancy.
I move that we set public hearings via RSA 41:14A for November 27th, December 11th, and December 18th.
Okay, we have to say what we're doing though, correct? These are the
I
easements.
can read out each of the, yeah. so you're-
Can I
Read 'em out?
read them out? The Campion Ring
Read 'em
drainage easement, the Hanover
there we
Inn,
go, Hanover.
Cocher, the Old Tech Drive sidewalk easement, West Wheelock sewer pump station, North College Street sidewalk, North College Street retaining wall, Pine Park public access, removal of enforcement rights, restrictive covenants for 33 Goodfellow Road, pond conservation easement from Lebanon. These are things we've talked about, I'm gonna say a million times, but we need to, with the approval that we got at the most recent town meeting, somebody help me out, easements are now part of things that the select board can act on independent of town meeting, following very strict rules, which are to set all of these public hearings. So
A three-step process.
three-step process. So we are hereby, the motion is to hereby notify the public that we are acting as the enabled by town meeting 2023. I second your motion.
Great.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passed unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Minutes. I think we're really getting better on the minutes. I think the process is improving.
I just had one thing on the 9th,
Yep.
and that's on page 3 of 5, and sort of the end of that paragraph. That the select board requested revenue and park mobile data usage data by time of day, pre and post the trial, to see how it went.
Jenny, can you tell me where you are again, please?
Oh, sorry,
Page 3.
page 3 of 5, like the top of it.
Oh, the top.
We requested the data for the revenue loss and the park mobile usage data by time of day. And then I had also requested the last date that the parking attendant had been paid on Saturday in the town garage.
Okay. I'm gonna put those are on the tape. We're gonna. Okay. So any other issues with regard to October 9th? I move that we accept the minutes as amended.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passed unanimously. The 16th?
16th, on,
That was our long meeting, right?
Yes.
it was long meeting. So on page 6 of,
Yep. We wanted it long.
Yes.
That was the goal.
Yes, we got it.
page 6 of 9.
Page 6 of
On
9.
the minutes for the 16th, reclassification of sustainability director position, there's no mention there of it being a coordinator. I know we strongly urged, and I recall Alex acquiescing, that there would be a sustainability coordinator job position.
Here, I found it later, I don't know how the minutes get written, like, is it supposed to just be 6, so on the last page.
You're talking about 9 of 9?
Yeah, on the, sorry, 7 of 9 at the bottom of the page is where it's mentioned, but it's confusing because it seems like it's wrapped up and then it comes back.
Well, we did come back to it.
Yeah, I know, because it's a minute or it's minutes.
Okay.
But
It is there.
it's there, right? Is this what you mean
Okay,
though?
yeah, so.
So
okay.
it's like the board
It's
discussed
just
their
not in the
opinions
right
of whether the
place.
So,
sustainability director
can I-
proposes it director and after discussion,
Can we
yeah, blah, blah.
focus attention on the really wonderful input from the town citizens with respect to, do we think we captured well what people were talking about? I think we did.
Yes, yes.
I really don't, I actually took pretty good notes too, and I think this captured it pretty well. It was a good discussion.
Do we know if we have the names right? That was my only question.
Good question, Jenny.
Because I think we should ask people maybe to spell their names.
Yeah, we've done that in the past.
Just because some of the names don't look like real names, but maybe they are.
Well, I think they're all,
They look.
except Ryan and, wait a minute. No, that's spelled the same way, sorry.
Well, we wouldn't know if they weren't, I mean, we're not gonna solve that problem now.
No,
Sure.
no.
So, I move that we accept the minutes.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So that was the 16th. Okay, we're really doing well. We're doing well. We're doing well. Stay positive, everybody.
Tell them yourself.
Stay positive.
Yes.
I get to check that off.
I wonder if I could get water.
Sure, we're gonna do the consent. Go get water, Jenny. We have a quorum, true. Let's note that Jenny left for 2 seconds. So we have consent items, donations to the Hanover Fire Department, we will read them out in a second. This is really exciting, the appointment of election officials. Just a wonderful, I don't know how many are on here, but there are a lot. Does she give us the exact number? No, she doesn't. Just, you know, I know most of the people on this list, and I really want to express appreciation for everyone, and those people I don't know.
You could read all those names.
I wish I could read all the names, but that would take a long period of time, because that's how democracy works, and it's very important.
I'd just like to observe that in communities where people are walking away from polling responsibilities,
Yeah.
people are walking towards
Yeah, I mean, I
that volunteer
gotta,
effort in our town.
hey Nick, can you just zoom in on this, okay? I don't know. Okay, there's one page, that's a list of people there, and then on the other side, just want to reinforce what Nancy just said. We have a lot of commitment to supporting democracy in the town of Hanover. Thank you, Nick.
Thanks, Nick.
That's one item. The other is to free holiday parking on Saturdays. This is something we've done as long, not forever, but for a very long period of time, at least a decade, probably more. And I think it's fine to be in the consent agenda. And then the last is the approval of the trial ratio study report that Norm talked about in his memo. I move that we accept, and we did pull out I should say this, we had previously pulled out item number 4, which is we already talked about, I'm not going to go over it. So I move that we accept items 1, 2, 3, and 5. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So I typically like to just read the donations. Does anybody have them in front of them? I gotta get better organized. I gotta use staplers.
All right. So
Oh, here we go. Yes, I got them right here. Yeah, this is very good. Every donation is good, but these are interesting donations. Stephen Rich and Judith Sterndale are donating a vehicle to the town of Hanover, to the Hanover Fire Department to be used. What they do is training purposes, meaning, open it up with their jaws of life and things like that. And another similar donation was given by Gerald and Candace Webster, and those are both wonderfully appreciated.
Mr. Chair, are we going to call out the fact that they're both Volvos? So
I was going to.
Probably going to have difficulty trying those vehicles.
I was going to go the other way, Nancy. I was going to say, what's wrong with
What's
Volvo?
wrong with these vehicles? These Volvos, they haven't reached their 250,000
When I read this on Friday, that's what I was thinking about. Oh, what's wrong with Volvos? But anyway, we're joking aside. Thank you very much to those wonderful donations. Okay, so we did the complete agenda.
Yes, we have.
Let me just look back.
So what do they do with them? Do they let them retire and rescue people?
Yeah. It's very helpful for them. Okay, we're almost done. Town manager report. You don't have much to report,
I got
do
nothing.
you? What's that?
I got nothing.
Good. Let's do select board reports.
I know.
Carrie.
Yeah, bear with me one second. Okay, so there have been multiple capital improvement program committees meetings since we last met on October 27th and last Friday, which was November 3rd. So October 27th, we what did we do? We reviewed the capital improvement program process with Rob Hausman, and we talked about, Brian Edwards talked about the master plan. That was the bulk of it. The last meeting on Friday, and feel free to jump in.
Let's note that Jenny's also on this committee.
Yeah, it was...
next time I'm going to have to start there.
Yeah, you should start there, yeah. Was on the form that department heads would use with respect to capital improvement program requests. Finance committee also met October 26th.
Who did those minutes? They look really formal.
Yeah, this is actually the agenda, but discussed the audit, the MS 535, MS 434, setting of the tax rate, and then a number of school-related issues as well.
Okay, so I have nothing to report. Thank you, Carrie.
Sure.
Nancy?
I have nothing to report.
Jenny?
We're working with Dartmouth engineers, it's kind of exciting.
This is Bike Walk?
Yeah, to create a device that counts people walking and biking. And they've been working with DPW and planning
What kind of
to
device?
see. But if you want to see the presentations Thursday during 10 hour, I'm teaching, but they're making it next term. It's a camera machine learning model.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's kind of exciting because they've been visiting the departments and seeing learning needs and constraints, and meeting with the regional planning commission as well. Everyone's very excited.
Thank you, Jenny. That is really cool. All right. I move we adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you, everybody. It's
Okay.
been a long day.
That's a wrap. Thank you, Ellen.
Let me just make sure we signed everything. So, Ellen?
I like this idea of putting our executive session in front.
Yeah,